Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Monday. Happy holiday week. Thanksgiving is on Thursday. Irish Breakdown is going to be rolling all throughout the week. Up until the holiday, there's going to be a lot of awesome content coming your way this week, ladies and gentlemen. It starts with today. And what we're going to be diving into today is we have a Week 13 recap. Just recapping the Notre Dame playoff routing guide, what went well, what didn't. And then we're also going to talk in part two of today's show, obviously, about Notre Dame and what's at stake for them in their upcoming matchup in the final regular season game against the Stanford Cardinal out west in a very late kickoff time. And then we are going to finish up today with a daily mailbag. So make sure that you guys get your questions in throughout the show. If this is one of your first times hopping into our show for a mailbag, if you want your question, comment, concern answered, you put a little MB for mailbag and then ask your question, or you can always put a little mailbox emoji. So loaded show today. Brian, how you doing today, man?
I'm great. I'm ready to rock and roll, man. I'm so excited for this game this weekend. I'm so excited for Thanksgiving on Thursday. I absolutely love Thanksgiving. It's one of my favorite holidays because you get to make some of my favorite foods, and good show. Good lineup of shows set up this week too. And then, of course, we're getting closer and closer to finding out what the playoff picture is going to look like. We'll have a much better idea once this week is over. Obviously, some things could happen in the conference championship games, and who's the ACC champ going to be. But at least by the end of this weekend, we'll know who's going to be playing in the ACC championship, and who's the Big 12 champ going to be. Is it going to be Texas versus BYU, Texas Tech versus BYU in a rematch? Is it going to be Texas Tech versus somebody else? I don't know. Who's going to play in the SEC championship? We're going to learn all those things and find all those things out, because other than the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is kind of like, okay, Ohio State don't lose to an okay Michigan team, and Indiana don't lose to a bad Purdue team, and it's going to be those two teams. But even there's still uncertainty. There's not a single conference that I can think of where the title game winners are just set, or title game contenders. Like the two teams are going to play, not contenders, the participants is the word I'm looking for. I'll eventually get to the right word. The title game participants is set. There's not, of the four Power Fours and then of the American, I don't think the Mountain West Conference championships are set either. I'm looking at it now. They're not set. Like, none of these leagues are set, and the Big Ten is the closest that we have to it. And that's still, I mean, that isn't set because the team that we think is going to be in has to beat a team they haven't beaten 5 years. So it's going to be a great weekend. Rivalry weekend is always fun. Hey, USC, just want to point out to you guys that there actually are teams playing this weekend on rivalry weekend who are not in the same conference. Just want to point that out. This week, Trev, we have got Florida State, not in the same conference. We have got, scroll down here, Georgia Tech, not in the same conference. We've got Louisville and Kentucky, not in the same conference. So imagine that, Trevor, that there are actually rivalry games happening this weekend. Oh, by the way, Clemson, South Carolina, not in the same conference. So imagine that. It's crazy, this notion that there are actually rivalry games happening this weekend between teams that aren't in the same league. Who knew? Who knew that this was even such an option, this craziness that is rivalry weekend? I just can't believe it, Trevor. Absolutely can't believe it. So
it's a wild concept.
Yeah, I know, right? Isn't that nuts? It's just, wow, you guys are not in the same league and you're playing rivalry weekend? Like, I didn't know that was allowed. So I thought you had to play in weeks 1 or 2 if that was the case. That's what I thought. I mean, that's what I'm being told by people out in LA. So, but I love, in all seriousness, I love rivalry week. It's not an easy thing to say, but it's a great thing to have some fun with. So
yeah,
I am very much looking forward to this week. It's going to be an absolute blast.
Well, before we get to rivalry week, Brian, let's talk about week 13 and some of the games that went down this past weekend. And really where we'll start is with the game that we were all paying attention to, is the Notre Dame Syracuse game. It was senior day in South Bend. And Brian, let's talk a little bit about what kind of statement Notre Dame made this past weekend, just for, in case anybody forgot, which I highly doubt. Notre Dame won 70-7 inside of Notre Dame Stadium on Senior Day, the last guaranteed home game of the 2025 season, in a game where from start to finish, it was all blue and gold, man. So when you go back and you look at that performance, Brian, what kind of statement did Notre Dame make this weekend?
Well, I mean, you see it. I mean, you're seeing it even nationally. People are like, wow, that was an absolute beatdown. Like this is Notre Dame team showed everyone, hey, we are one of the best teams in college football. I mean, that's the first statement that was made is, and you know, you'll see some Miami fans like, oh, you ran the score up on, it was 56-0 at halftime. I don't know exactly what you want to do. I mean, it was 14-0 when Syracuse and Miami played at halftime, literally in the last game that Syracuse played before Notre Dame. I mean, you made a statement that, hey, we're going to come out here and we're going to dominate you on offense, 49 points on 39 snaps. We're going to not dominate you on defense. The only part of Notre Dame's team that didn't outscore the entire Syracuse team is the Notre Dame special teams. And technically, if you wanted to get real technical, you could argue that they did as well because the extra points, but it's like you can't have extra points without scoring touchdowns from your offense or defense. And that side of the ball tied Syracuse 7-7. So the defense outscored Syracuse 14-7. The special teams tied Syracuse 7-7, and the offense outscored Syracuse 49-7. The second team offense outscored Syracuse 14-7. So you look at it and you're like, it was an absolutely dominant first performance. I mean, when you do something at Notre Dame positively that hasn't been done since 1932, you had a tremendous performance. And it was the kind of statement you needed to like kind of just you needed. We talked about it last week, Trevor. You needed to blow Syracuse out and show everyone that we are that team. Compared to Miami, you know, you needed that. You know, you had one win again. You've had one opponent that you've both played so far. That was NC State, and Miami's win was more impressive. It was by 5 points, but they dominated for 4 quarters. Notre Dame dominated for 2.5. You have to say that was an advantage for Miami. Well, this one completely swings in the opposite direction because Notre Dame dominated not only the first half more dominantly, but the whole game way more. Notre Dame almost doubled up Syracuse. Miami's point total in this game. Miami had 38. Notre Dame had 70. You double up Miami, that's 76. Notre Dame is 1 touchdown away from that. So I look at it, Trevor, and say, like, you made a statement letting everybody know we are one of those teams. We are. I mean, you see them jumping up in the different rankings. The Sagarin, I think, now has Notre Dame 2nd or 3rd. Let me go look that up. So if you look at the Sagarin rating, Notre Dame jumped up from 5th to 2nd. If you look at the Football Power Index at ESPN, and they went up in that one as well. So let me just pull that up here real quick. So the Football FPI, Notre Dame jumped up to 3rd. They were 5th last week. If you look at the SP Plus, Notre Dame jumped up in that as well. I think they were 6th last week. They're up to 5. And so like the level of dominance is going to make them go up in all of the different models, which helps add to your resume. And you did that while Miami had a convincing win this weekend. I think people trying to spin that and say like, oh, Miami barely beat Virginia Tech. That's not how I see that. I shouldn't say spin it because some people can genuinely believe that. I don't think that's necessarily spin. It was a convincing win. Virginia Tech never got closer than 10 points in the second half, 9 points in the second half. And Miami then went down and scored. So it wasn't like Miami was ever threatened to lose to Virginia Tech. But it wasn't a pretty win either. And while Notre Dame is out there just annihilating Syracuse from start to finish, that does widen the gap a little bit when you do that against a team. Literally, Syracuse played Notre Dame and Miami in back-to-back games. And you have something to measure that by. Notre Dame beats Syracuse more convincingly than Alabama beats Eastern Illinois, a 3-9 FCS team. So Notre Dame beats Syracuse far more convincingly than Georgia, for example, beats Charlotte, I think, who's a 1-10 FBS team. So all those things kind of fly into or kind of play into the fact that Notre Dame's resume got stronger just by what they did. And there's some other things that hurt their resume, some other things that helped their resume outside of them. But the biggest thing is you went out and showed in every facet of the game you're dominant. And Trev, the thing I'll kick to you is we've heard from the committee that they're looking for balanced teams. They're looking for teams that are good on both sides of the ball in all phases of the game. And that's something that Notre Dame has certainly shown in recent games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you get more of a balanced attack on both sides of the football than when you look at Notre Dame. I mean, it's even reflective in some of their rankings this season. I mean, they're 7th in the country in points per game. They're 22nd in the country in yards per game, and it's a relatively even split. They average 204.9 rushing yards a game, 247.6 passing yards a game. They're equally as explosive in both. I mean, they rank 4th in the country in yards per attempt and 7th in the country in yards per rush. They have 22 passing touchdowns, 34 rushing touchdowns. I mean, it's a very, very balanced attack. And the defensive numbers, I had a lot of fun putting those in today. I mean, Notre Dame is now 12th in the country in points per game. Sidebar, who would have thought that Notre Dame's defense would have been here after the month of September? Not me. I didn't. I mean, we talked about it on the postgame show, but like, I didn't think it was. I was adamant that it wouldn't. Just because of what I saw, I'm happy that I got proven wrong. Believe me. I am probably the happiest person because I was very adamant that it wasn't going to happen. And here they are with the 12th ranked defense in the country in points per game, 22nd in yards per game, 13th in rushing yards per game. When you look at it, the totality, they're 59th in the country in passing yards allowed per game. Considering that 2 months ago they were in the 120s, I'll accept them cutting their ranking in by half, man. I mean, the improvement that was made on the defensive side of the ball was fantastic. It's a very balanced Notre Dame.
Real quick about that passing number too, is that's also a byproduct of the fact that of your 9 wins, only one of them has been a competitive game.
Yeah.
Like you say 2. BC was kind of competitive. Your other 7 were absolute blowouts. So teams are going to be throwing the ball more. Notre Dame ranks 31st now in yards per attempt, and in their passer ranking, they're 11th. So, like, to my point is, you are correct. They were in the 120s for like 3 games. Now they're 59, but those other metrics that, besides just yards, show that this is a much better pass defense than it was then. Even though the numbers for Notre Dame's 15th now in completion percentage. You remember what they were after 3 games? Wasn't great. And that was with Marcel Reed going sub 50% in that game against them. But to add to your point, even within the passing numbers where they don't skyrocket up in yards, there's context for that shows they've even improved as much there as they have in other areas because of the fact that, they've done so well with the rating aspect of it, so that part even has gotten way better. Please continue, good sir.
I mean, that was really it. I mean, they're a balanced team. And I know the committee holds that in extremely high regard. There's a lot of other teams that are ahead of Notre Dame that you could argue aren't as balanced as Notre Dame. I wouldn't say Ohio State is as balanced as Notre Dame on offense. As exciting as their passing game has been, it's unfortunately taken a step back with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate out with undisclosed lower body injuries. Their rushing attack isn't where Notre Dame's is. I would say the same thing about Indiana. Definitely say the same thing about Alabama. That's not a team ranked ahead of Notre Dame, but we're talking teams in the playoff discussion. So Notre Dame is an extremely balanced attack. We've talked about it all season long. Now the stats are starting to reflect overall what we've been seeing on a week-to-week basis of just how do defenses stop Notre Dame. Yeah, sure, sell it to stop the run. I've watched teams try to do that. CJ Carr goes for north of 280 passing yards. Okay. You want to prevent CJ Carr from taking over the game? It's what USC did. Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love combined for 317 rushing yards that game. They're very difficult offense to stop, and they are foreseeably getting one of their better offensive weapons back come the postseason in Jaden Greathouse. So this is just a unit that's absolutely humming. Also getting, hopefully, Billy Schrouth back. This team is going to start hitting stride at the right time, man.
That's going to be kind of fun to see. Like, can they plug those pieces back in and not miss a beat? I mean, it doesn't always work that way, but you feel good about it because they did that last year. I mean, they got some pieces back in the postseason and were able to plug them in relatively well. But yeah, it was definitely an opportunity to go out there and show the world like, hey, we're going to dominate, and we are dominant. We're going to blow everybody out. And for all the talk about how Notre Dame doesn't play anybody, which is just a really lazy talking point. In Notre Dame's last 5 games, they've beaten 3 teams that were ranked when they played. And then the one knock, well, you played this bad BC team. Well, you've exercised that demon by what you did on Saturday. Like, that's not even in the conversation. I don't want to hear anything else about that. Don't want to hear a word about that now. So I think that was a very important part of that win. And now you got to do it one more time, right? Because if you go out there and beat Stanford by a touchdown, now all of a sudden that Syracuse win is going to be diminished, And I'm not saying you got to win 70-7. I'm just mean you got to win in impressive fashion again. I don't think that's the new bar. Well, if they don't get to 70, then screw Marcus Freeman. He sucks. He can't motivate his team after Thanksgiving. Too much turkey and stuffing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that at this point, it's an opportunity for you you've got one more opportunity to go out there and show the world like, hey, we are a dominant football team and we are one of the country's best football teams. That's what Notre Dame is trying to show. And they certainly made that statement on Saturday against Stanford.
Well, let's talk about some of the other games that went on around college football, some results that impacted Notre Dame's, overall resume for the good and for the not so good. And where we're going to start off, I mean, Brian, it was a very, very impressive win that Pitt had over Georgia Tech on the road, 42-28. That win bumped Pittsburgh up to having the 4th best odds on FanDuel to win the ACC. And then that unfortunately dropped Georgia Tech down to where they're going to need a lot of different things to happen for them. So big win for Pitt, a team that Notre Dame beat by 22 points.
It was, Trev. I mean, it's one of those games where Pitt winning was going to be big for Notre Dame no matter what. But Pitt winning in a really just impressive fashion where they were clearly the better team. And if it wasn't for Pat Narduzzi making an absolutely absurd fake punt call on 4th and 9, you're up 35-21 in your own territory. You fake punt on 4th and 9, and it wasn't even a creative one. Like, it wasn't even like one of the Marty Biaggi specials where there's some kind of action and a reverse and a pass and all that. It was just a direct snap handoff to or outside run to a guy. Never even came close. If you don't do that, I don't know what Georgia Tech gets back in the game. But then for Pitt to respond by going down and scoring a touchdown and putting that game away and really winning in impressive fashion was huge for Notre Dame to in that game, 42-28. I mean, they were clearly the better team in that game. I mean, just from start to finish, never trailed. The only tie was 0-0. They outgained Georgia Tech 412-378, and it was only that because Pat Narduzzi called off the dogs in the second half, which is just beyond me. Like, that is what D coordinators do when they're head coaches, not what head coaches do. And that was one of our fears earlier on Marcus Freeman, and he's gotten past that, and this team comes out and tries to bury people. But it was a huge win for Pitt, and what it does is it's really twofold. So it goes back saying, okay, Pitt is that good. It's just Notre Dame is that much better right now because, Pitt was playing dominant coming into that game. They dominated the week after. They went on the road and beat a 9-1 number 16 team in the country by 2 touchdowns in a game. That was only a 1-score game let me look at the box score. Pitt scored to go up 14-0 12 minutes into the game. And then they came down and made it a single-digit game in the 4th quarter, and then Pitt went right down 2 minutes. So only 15 of the 60 minutes of this game were even a single-digit game. And that's because it was nothing to start the game. Georgia Tech makes it a single-digit game, and then Pitt goes right down the field and scores a touchdown in 2 minutes. So I think it's one of those things where you say, okay, maybe Notre Dame is that good. And the other part of it, Trevor, is I'm pretty confident that and there's a little bit more to this, obviously. I'll just kind of bring it up now because I think it fits right here a little better than where I put it in the rankings is It also the fact that Illinois, Houston, and Missouri all lost. That's 21, 22, and 23 all lost this weekend. There's a pretty good chance now that Pitt jumps back into the top 25 and maybe leaps a couple teams that were at the bottom because of how impressive that win was. So now all of a sudden, all the people say, well, you haven't beat anybody. Well, they got 2 ranked wins, now, and so their resume changes. That's going to be good for Notre Dame. Now, it changes back. If Miami beats them next weekend, they probably fall out of the top 25 again. But at least for now, it gives them that for the rankings on Tuesday, I can only deal with what we know, not what we think is going to happen next weekend, because if Pitt goes and beats Miami this weekend, then Pitt jumps into the top 20. And now you've got 2 top 20 wins, assuming that USC can beat UCLA. So that certainly improves Notre Dame's resume quite a bit. And so that was very, very big for Notre Dame. And of course, it keeps Pitt's hopes alive for them to play in the ACC. Because what do they need now? They need SMU or Virginia to lose this weekend, right?
Yep.
If one of those 2 teams loses and they beat Miami, they're in.
Yep.
So they opened up their own path.
Yeah, they sure did. It's significantly more in their hands this week than it was last week, that's for sure. I mean, I would be absolutely astonished if Pitt isn't ranked this week, given the losses. And the committee has been they haven't explained it openly, but there's been a pretty clear pattern that they're using the bottom half of the top 25 to prop up teams ranked ahead and really in the top 15. That's the only reason why I think Illinois ended up being ranked this past week. If I'm being real, it's one of the only reasons why I think Tennessee continues to still be ranked. I would be shocked if Pitt wasn't, especially after as dominating of a win that they had. One of the more impressive rushing performances of this past weekend that not a lot of people are talking about is Ja'Kyron Turner, running back for Pitt. He had 21 carries, 201 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 9.6 yards a clip. I mean, that's really impressive against the number 16 team in the country. Georgia Tech isn't known for their rush defense, but when their backup running back, Desmond Reed, didn't even play in the game, had more rushing yards than what Georgia Tech had as a team, almost doubled them up. It's a really impressive rushing performance, man.
And that hasn't exactly been a strength for Pitt this year. Running the football hasn't been a strength for them. I also want to think that it's hilarious to me that Miami fans are trying to say that Pitt wasn't really trying. My answer is, then why did they play Desmond Reed? If they weren't trying to beat Notre Dame, Desmond Reed had missed the previous game. He had been banged up much of the year. They had to play this game without him. Why would they risk Desmond Reed being injured playing if they weren't trying against Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean,
so it blows that whole thing out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't have played Desmond Reed. They wouldn't have played Rasheem Biles, who missed a couple of games prior to coming back against Notre Dame. I mean, if they really wanted to, wouldn't shock me if Pat Narduzzi wanted to do this. They would have started Eli Holstein to make sure Mason Heinschel stayed healthy for their matchups again. Yeah, you can miss me with that stuff. I mean, it's the same thing about, Arkansas also didn't try against Notre Dame. They just tried a little harder in all of their other losses in the SEC. You can miss me with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. You might be able to claim that, in conference games mean more in the SEC and the Big Ten, which I still don't buy to. You're not going to convince me that in the ACC. Come on, bro. Nah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. And I want to push back on something. There's some in the chat. People are saying, well, SMU winning and getting into the top 25 helps Miami. Not really. First of all, Notre Dame beating a team ranked in the top 25 is going to help them better than Miami now having a loss in the top 25, number one. Number two, it actually doesn't help Miami's resume. It makes their loss look better, I guess, but like their record against top 25 teams this past week was 1-0. Now they're 1-1. It does not help their resume. Notre Dame's record going against top 25 teams prior to this week was 1-2. Now they're 2-2. So no, it actually doesn't really help their resume a whole lot by adding a loss at the bottom. And that only matters, just like Notre Dame having the win over Pitt. It only matters if Pitt then goes out and beats Miami this weekend. Same thing with SMU. It only matters if they go out there and win the ACC championship. So it's going to be very fascinating, in my opinion. I do expect SMU to be in the top 25, at the bottom of the top 25 rankings, because they are going to want to try to bump Miami up and help them out with a better loss. But I'd much rather have a ranked win jumping into the top 25 than a ranked loss. That's going to create more separation between the two teams. It doesn't narrow things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A little bit more ACC action. I think this was a Friday night game. NC State beat Florida State 21-11, and they converted on a 4th and goal touchdown pass to Justin Joly to put that game away.
Great catch.
Yeah,
great catch. I mean, it's a good ball, but an even better catch by Justin Joly. And I don't know. I thought the special teams at the end of the Clemson-Louisville game the week before was bad. This might have been worse.
Yeah,
like this might have been worse. Like, Florida State can't field a punt on back-to-back punts. Like, it was bad. But how it helps Notre Dame, NC State was 5-5. They are now 6-5 with a home game against North Carolina coming up. One of the things the committee looks at, they do look at top 25 wins, but they also look at quality wins. A quality win is any win of a team over 500. This now makes NC State 6-5. If they lost this game, they had no chance of being over 500. The best they could do is be 500, which would not have counted as a quality loss. The one metric, there's only really 2 metrics that Alabama had an edge on Notre Dame. One was top 25 wins. That's now a lot narrower between them and Bama. Bama was 4-1. They're most likely now going to be 3-1 against ranked teams. Notre Dame is now was 1-2. They're now likely to be 2-2 against ranked teams. Bama had 5 quality wins. Notre Dame had 4. Now that NC State is 6-5, that now counts as a quality win. And if they can beat North Carolina at home this weekend, and we've talked about how good they are at home, that stays a quality win. And Notre Dame is gonna be there. I didn't put this in the outline, Trevor, but Boise State beating Colorado State did the same thing. They were 6-4. They could have lost it to Colorado State and Utah State and gone 6-6. Now that drops Notre Dame's quality wins to 3. But by them both winning, Boise locks in being a quality win, and now NC State is a home win over a bad North Carolina team away from locking in as a quality win, which will give Notre Dame 5. So that helps a lot because there aren't many teams that have more than 5. And the teams around them don't have that many. Bama's the only one. Now Notre Dame can say they tied them. So I would throw NC State and Boise both winning this weekend made Notre Dame's resume even better. It's not like, okay, now Notre Dame's going to jump up to 6, but it definitely helps close the gap in a couple areas where Alabama did have the advantage over Notre Dame, while Notre Dame was able to kind of create some distance in other areas.
Definitely helps. Absolutely helps. One of the other final good things that happened for Notre Dame as far as their resume goes, their upcoming opponent. Stanford kind of held true to being a pretty dominant, well, not dominant, but being a good team at home. Stanford beat Cal in the Cal-Stanford rivalry 31-10 inside of Stanford Stadium this past weekend, Brian.
Absolutely absurd that Cal fired Justin Wilcox after that. Absolutely absurd. The fact that that guy takes you to bowl games every year, you should count yourself as blessed. They are going to, in my opinion, they're going to absolutely crash after this. But it was a bad loss for them this weekend. I won't deny that either. And, you know, it's not necessarily like, okay, game-changing win for Notre Dame's resume, but overall it helps the quality of their resume. I mean, when a team that you're about to play is coming off of a 31-10 victory over their rival, you know, game that they won pretty convincingly, you know, second half really pulled away in the fourth quarter and won that game thanks to some, some bad turnovers. I mean, they had 2 fumble returns for touchdowns, Trevor, I believe, defensively, one on special teams and one they both on defense. They were both on defense. You know, 2 fumble returns. You had a touchdown drive that only went like 20 yards in the game. So, you know, it was more about their defense played very well, and we'll have a lot to say about their defense tomorrow, which will be very interesting. But so looking at it, Trevor, those type of things really help Notre Dame's overall resume. They do. You know, just like East Carolina losing keeps Navy in the hunt for the AAC championship game. You know, we'll talk more about that this week, but all those things overall help your resume. And those things help balance out the bad things that happen in your resume, which there was also some of that this weekend.
There was, unfortunately. Notre Dame's, their best win of the season was over USC, who climbed up to 15th in the college football playoff rankings. They traveled up to Eugene, and they lost to the Ducks 42-21. 27 in a game that was always, I think you were the one that talked about it in the prediction show. It was always, USC was always kind of playing catch up a little bit. Jaden Maeva wasn't able to take care of the football. The Ducks had a really good win, 42-27 over the Trojans.
Yeah, I mean, it was good that USC didn't get blown out. I mean, it was a competitive game. They made it a touchdown game in the second half, and then, they went down and scored. And USC, and the reason it matters is USC goes out and gets destroyed by Oregon. There's a chance they fall out of the top 25. It's unlikely, but there's a chance. With a competitive win, they probably only drop 3 or 4 or 5 spots at the most. So they'll still be most likely a top 20 team because they still have some very good wins. But it would have been really nice if you could have got that USCW, because it would have gave Notre Dame an even better win. It also would have dropped Oregon behind them. But USC once again shows that while they're improving in year 4 of the Lincoln Riley era, they're still not in the same league as the top teams in the country. They're just not. Defensively, they can't make important stops. Their offensive line gets smacked every time they play a good defense. And, while their quarterback's a good player, he's good against teams that aren't very good. He makes a lot of bad mistakes in big games. We saw that even against Notre Dame. Put up yards, but then just make some really bad mistakes. And Lincoln Riley is just not the play caller he used to be when they're playing good teams. He just isn't. And we saw that in the game as well. So that certainly hurt. And then, of course, Trevor, Oklahoma beat Missouri. I don't know that it didn't hurt Notre Dame. It didn't help Notre Dame. Missouri was already ahead. Fair. And Missouri got a ranked win over a team that's probably going to fall out of the top 25, but it was a convincing win. It wasn't pretty, but it was convincing. You know what I mean? Like, I can't remember who it was, but we had somebody in the chat last week brought up that how Oklahoma reminds them a lot of Notre Dame 2012. And this was exactly the kind of win that Notre Dame got in 2012, right? Like, it was ugly, low scoring, but it was also one where you're like, you never really thought they were going to lose the game either. You know what I mean? And that's good. I think that was a quality win. I think Oklahoma didn't do anything to me this weekend. And if you thought Oklahoma was better than Notre Dame last week, I don't know that anything happened this weekend is going to make you, make that change. So that certainly didn't necessarily help Notre Dame either, because it'd be nice to get a home game. We've talked about that. I'd really like Notre Dame to get a home team. And there still is if everything goes wrong scenario where Notre Dame doesn't make the playoffs. It's unlikely, but it's still there. Some people are obsessing over those scenarios a little bit more than I care to. But if Oklahoma or Oregon loses this weekend, those scenarios are gone. They're irrelevant. Notre Dame's in as long as they beat Stanford. You know what I mean? So that didn't happen. And then, of course, BYU losing to beating Cincinnati. Cincinnati choked that. I mean, they had so many chances to win that game. They missed 3 field goals, gave up a late score. They had so many chances to win that game and just couldn't get it done. That obviously would have removed one more team away from Notre Dame. I'm a little torn on that one. To me, that one kind of helps Notre Dame in some areas. It only hurts Notre Dame if BYU goes and beats Texas Tech, which I still don't think necessarily. I think there's this assumption that means BYU jumps Notre Dame, or that Texas Tech also stays ahead. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think they're both now ahead of Notre Dame. I think that Bama should be more worried about BYU winning out than they should, unless Bama goes out and wins the SEC. But I think that was obviously would have been helpful in some ways, because then you don't have to worry about them jumping Notre Dame. But I think in some ways, too, it keeps some distance between Notre Dame and Miami. That's kind of my take on that one. What were your thoughts, Trev?
Yeah, I mean, I was relatively neutral in the OU Missouri game. I saw that very similarly to you. It would have been nice if Missouri was able to pull off the upset. Notre Dame jumps up a spot, but when you watch that game, Missouri's offense and I think they put Bo Pabula in just such a bad spot. I mean, dude dislocated his ankle a month ago. They're asking him to go up against the best defense that they had faced and try to run an offense a month off. I just think that's a bad coaching decision by Eli Drinkowitz. I do, and it resulted in them scoring 7 offensive points. So, and then with BYU, yeah, I get where you're coming from, kind of adding that buffer piece in between Notre Dame and Miami, but I'm with you. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm not that concerned about BYU. I think other teams around Notre Dame should be a little bit more concerned about that. So we see that the same. I'm with you. Folks, That's going to do it for part one of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk about what's at stake for Notre Dame in their final regular season game. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. We are going to have a mailbag at the end of today's show. Right now, we have about 9 questions in there. So make sure to get those questions in. Put a little MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji. That lets us know to set your question aside. And as always, folks, best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we are talking Notre Dame versus Stanford rivalry game. It's Notre Dame's final game of the regular season. Now, kickoff, it's a late one, folks, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Currently, Notre Dame is favored, and I thought this was a little odd, especially given their performance last week. Notre Dame is favored by 32.5 points. The over-under is set at 52.5. I wasn't expecting Notre Dame to be favored by 70, but considering that their opening line against Syracuse was like 35.5 and their opening line against Stanford is 32.5, I thought that was a little interesting, but when Notre Dame's favored by 30, I'm not.
And what did you expect it to be closer or wider?
No,
like,
I was expecting
them to be as small.
Go ahead. I expected it to be the same. Like I expected
Okay.
Notre Dame to be around. Like I didn't think it was going to be less. Now you get the 3-point. Stanford will get like a 3-point bump for being at home. So
that's what I was kind of thinking. Yeah.
Argument could be made that the spread, they see it to be the same, but yeah, I thought that was a little interesting. But again, the over-under is set relatively low. Notre Dame's spread is still relatively high. So they're expecting this to go down the same way, Brian.
Well, I love this series. You know, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's a series where I've been kind of back and forth on different times where I'm like ready for the series to be over, and then I'm not. And you know, but this is one where Notre Dame has a 24-14 all-time advantage over Stanford. The official number is 23-14, but that counts the vacated 2012 win. I don't do that. It's 24-14. It's one of those games where it feels like Notre Dame and Stanford have played more than 38 times, but they've only played 38 times because this rivalry really didn't become a thing until the 90s. Notre Dame and Stanford played for the first time in a stretch in the 1988. And then they played every year until 1995. Then they didn't play in 95, 96. And then from 97 on, they've played every year except the COVID year. And so this is a bit of a newer rivalry. Trevor, it was one of those ones where the school was looking for a chance to finish every year out in the West Coast for, you know, recruiting reasons that no longer are valid because recruiting is basically over by the time you get to the end of the regular season. I mean, signing day is next week. There's no on-the-road flips you're going to make in the next week. Those things have already kind of happened. And, you know, so I look at it this way and say, I don't know that I really care about this series continuing unless USC comes off the schedule, then I would still continue it. I just don't know that I would have it last game of the year every year. That would be my only thing. But it isn't a rivalry that has been through its fair share of ebbs and flows, Trevor, to say the least. You know, Stanford had some success against Notre Dame in the 90s. They beat Notre Dame in 1990, a big upset in 1990. Then a ranked Stanford team beat Notre Dame in 1992. The only loss that Notre Dame suffered that year was to that Bill Walsh coach Stanford team in 1992. Interestingly, the two coaches that beat Notre Dame under Lou Holtz were Dennis Green and Bill Walsh. So Stanford's had some guys that obviously had great success, and that was after Bill Walsh had won all the Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers. And then, of course, Notre Dame lost to Stanford in 1997 as well. That was part of the Bob Davie era. Their coach then, Ty Willingham, beat Notre Dame in 1997, beat Notre Dame also again in 1999, a ranked Stanford team. Notre Dame kind of took control in the 2000s, lost in 2001 to Stanford. That was Ty's last year there. So Ty had great success against Notre Dame. He didn't have great success at Notre Dame. They won every game from 2002 to 2008. And then from 2009 to 2017, Stanford largely dominated this series. Stanford won in 9, 10, 11. Notre Dame won in 12. Stanford won in 13. So won 4 out of 5 games. The Irish won in 15. And then Stanford won the next 3 games. Since then, Notre Dame has retaken control of the rivalry. They've won 5 out of 6. The only blip on the radar is just still the 2022 game, which is still the weirdest game I've ever seen before. I just watching that game, you're just like, I don't know what's happening right now. I really don't know what's happening right now. And so you look at it, Notre Dame won in 14, Stanford won in 15, 16, 17. Notre Dame has won 5 out of 6. And their 5 wins have all been dominant. They beat a top 10 Stanford team in 2018 by 21. They won in 2019 over a bad Stanford team by 29. No game in COVID year. In 21, they beat Stanford by 31. And then the weird 22 2-point win for Stanford. Last 2 years, Notre Dame beat Stanford at Stanford 56-23. Last year, they beat Stanford 49-7. Interestingly, though, Marcus Freeman did make a comment that said, we have trailed in the first quarter of every game we've played against Stanford. And I can't tell you how happy I was to hear him say that. First of all, this guy doesn't forget stuff. Like I've told y'all, he's a grudge holder when it comes to football. And I mean that in a good way, meaning he's not going to let this game in 22 just, oh, well, we've killed him recently, so we're not. No, I still have fuel that I can use to talk about this football team. We were losing to them 7-0 early last year. They were beating Notre Dame in the second. They had a lead in the second quarter against Notre Dame in 2023. I love that he put that out there because it tells us, hey, I'm going to make sure these guys know that this is not going to be a walk in the park. We're going to have to come out locked in and focused, because if Notre Dame comes out locked in and focused, this game will never be close. And I think what happened the last 2 times is they were playing a bad Stanford team and, kind of sleptwalk a little bit early in the game and then poured it on. But I don't think Marcus Freeman wants to go through that again. I think he wants to come out right now and say, we're going to put you away right now and let everybody know that this game will not be competitive at all.
Yeah. I was also very happy to hear him say that in the press conference. But overall, man, this Notre Dame-Stanford rivalry has been really weird, especially in my lifetime. I mean, it's been so odd. I mean, because at its peak, it was up there, man. I mean, it was. I mean, Stanford's coming to town. Notre Dame went winless at Stanford 6 times in a row, which was odd. They lost in 09, 11, 13, 15, 17, and then finally ended that streak in 2019. Like, it was just a weird. We obviously all remember the infamous goal line stand in 2012. That 2009 Stanford game was crazy. I mean, that was a game where they had a reverse pass to Clausen over to Floyd. Golden Tate broke like 19 tackles on one play on like a 50-yard touchdown pass. I mean, it was Toby Gerhart went nuts in that game. I mean, so there's been some very interesting games. 15 was nuts. But, now as of recent years, Notre Dame has taken back control of this one. But again, to your point.
To your point, even some of the wins they had early on were much more competitive than the losses they had. 2012, you mentioned that goal line stand. In 2014, they needed an Everett Golson touchdown in the final seconds to Ben Koyak to win that game. Yeah. Where Stanford was winning most of their games pretty convincingly. The 09 game was a very close game, but 2010 was a blowout. 2011 was a 2-touchdown game. 2013 was only a 1-touchdown game, but it was one of those games where you never actually thought they were going to win. Notre Dame was going to win that game. And then they started being more competitive in 15 and 16 and 17. 17 game was weird. That was a lot closer than an 18-point game. Notre Dame had a second-half lead in that game and just kind of fell apart at the end. But it's been pure domination. You just hope that in this game, Notre Dame can kind of do that at the beginning. And I think that is kind of where we dive into this sort of what's at stake for Notre Dame, Trevor, is the first thing is you get one more chance to go make an impression to the committee.
Yeah. And I would argue that the last time that they had this opportunity, they didn't perform that great. I'm not talking last year. I'm talking this season. Against Boston College, that was their last opportunity to make a statement to the committee before they released their first rankings. And they played a real ugly game against Boston College. Real ugly. Now, if they went out and beat Boston College, similar to how they beat Navy and how they beat Pitt or how they beat Syracuse, I don't think that makes Notre Dame like 7th in the initial rankings. Not saying that at all, but the last time that they had this opportunity to make an impression on the committee, they were sloppy. They weren't focused. Now, you have to build on this performance that you had against Syracuse and Pitt in back-to-back weeks. That is something I think the committee is going to be looking at as well. So it's your last chance to make a statement. And Notre Dame, obviously, as we know, isn't going to play in a conference championship game. So this is it. This is your one last opportunity to leave a lasting impression on the committee. And if I'm Notre Dame, I'm wanting to leave such a good impression that they're still talking about it during conference championship weekend. That's kind of what's at stake for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, you think back, we've seen Notre Dame finish years insanely impressive before. I mean, I like to draw back to past Notre Dame teams and past Notre Dame coaches, and I've pointed out before that the last two games of the Lou Holtz era were pretty darn dominant at home, and uh, they won back-to-back games against Pitt and Rutgers 60-6 and 62-0. You'd like to see sort of that kind of finish. And we'll just pretend that the USC loss at the end of the year didn't happen. We'll just pretend that one wasn't there. But you have a chance. I'm kind of being sarcastic here, but you have a chance to say, hey, look, what is the impression that's going to be on the mind of people? No, Notre Dame didn't beat anybody good down the stretch in their last two games. Now, if Pitt beats Miami, then okay, well, yeah, they did beat Miami, and if Navy can go out and beat Memphis this weekend, you're like, well, dude, I mean, okay, the last two teams sucked, but the two teams before that were pretty flipping good football teams. That's not in Notre Dame's control. What is in Notre Dame's control is that they go out there and say, yeah, we played this inferior team, but we beat this inferior team in a way that nobody else beat this inferior team. And we talked about that last week, against Syracuse. Like, look, Syracuse isn't very good. We know that. But what you have to do is you have to beat them a way that nobody else beat them. I mean, Duke beat them 38-3. That was a 35-point win. They lost by 25 to Georgia Tech, 17 to Pitt, 28 to Miami. Can you top that? Notre Dame was like, yeah, and then some. Beat them by 63. Similar situation here, Trev. This is not a very good Stanford team. We're not going to try to convince you guys. This is a good Stanford team. It's a more physical football team than the one they just faced. It's not a very athletic team, and we'll dive a lot more into that tomorrow. But what it is a team that's lost by 5 to North Carolina. They lost by 15. They lost by 35 to Miami, 24 to SMU, 28 to Virginia, and 24 to BYU. Those are all teams that, you're especially with Miami and BYU, Trev, those are teams that there's a chance that the common opponent comparison is going to mean something. And so you've got to be able to go out and say, hey, look, we beat this team more convincingly than you did. And that's what this opportunity that Notre Dame has this weekend is for Stanford, because also when you look at it, Stanford and Miami didn't happen at the beginning of the year. This game happened, I think, in late October. I mean, this is second half of the schedule for Miami, and Miami scored 14 of their points in their win in the second half, in the fourth quarter. It was 7-7 at halftime. So if you're Notre Dame, you want at home at Miami. That's exactly right. Miami ended up outgaining Stanford by 260 yards. You want to be able to dominate by more than that. So that's what's in front of Notre Dame right now, is you need to be able to go out and say, we beat them way more convincingly than anybody else did, because we're one of the best teams in the country. And that's what's at stake. It's not just about winning. Like, look, if a 17-point win doesn't knock Notre Dame out of the playoffs, but it will make things a little bit dicey, depending on what happens in some other scenarios. You go out there and handle business and win by 24, 28 or more, like that, you make that statement, especially if it's never really close. Now, if it's like 21-17 in the third quarter and then you put them away, this isn't like AP voters where they just look at box scores and they look at final scores. The committee has shown they watch film. They watch games. And this is your chance to say, Notre Dame's last, the BC game was not good, but Notre Dame's last 16 quarters of football is as dominant as anybody in the country, if not more so, is the statement you want to make. And you think about that, Trevor. Dominated Navy for 4 quarters. Dominated Pitt for 4 quarters. Dominated Syracuse for 4 quarters. They have yet to be in a game since Boston College where it was in doubt coming out of halftime. Pitt was over at halftime. Navy was over at halftime. The last 2 games, obviously, the last game obviously was as well. So that's what Notre Dame is trying to show. That's what's at stake for them this weekend is that. And then like I said, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Notre Dame and Miami have a lot of common opponents down the stretch. Some that Notre Dame play, some that Miami play. It needs to not be close between you and them. And right now, Miami coming into last weekend had a slight advantage because they beat NC State by, was it 5 more than what Notre Dame beat them by? They outgained NC State by more than what Notre Dame outgained them. Advantage Miami. When you look at the other side of it, okay, now Notre Dame's significantly more dominant over Syracuse than Miami was. Now you're playing Stanford the same weekend they're playing Pitt. So if you're Notre Dame, what you're hoping for is even if Miami beats Pitt, you want that to be a knockdown, drag-out, four-quarter game where if Pitt wins in a walk-off field goal, so be it. Because we can be like 2 weeks later, we absolutely annihilated that team. And then you need to go beat Stanford by far more than what Miami did. That's where the conversation needs to be in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, from Boston College to Syracuse, Notre Dame has an almost 100-point differential. They're outscoring their opponents 141-42. That has to remain. That the blemish on the record can't be then they beat Stanford 38-27. It can't be something like that. Again, like we said at the start of the show, it's not going to be 70-7. I'm going to just say that right now. The score is not going to be 70-7, nor will we predict it to be 70-7, nor should anybody expect it to be 70-7. But that being said, Notre Dame still has to go out and put a dominant performance. And it's also happening in the same weekend that Pitt is playing another like opponent, or that Miami's playing another like opponent of what Notre Dame has already played. They get Pitt this week on the road. So definitely a lot at stake in this one, man. Notre Dame has been extremely dominant. I mean, they've had past victories going back to Boston College. Like they've won by 63, 22, 39, and 15. You know, so this is one that Notre Dame absolutely has to continue that trend, because it all goes back to the number one point. This is it. This is the last time you have a lasting impression to put on the committee. This is the last weekend that there is anything remotely in control of your destiny, because you don't play in championship weekend. Mm-hmm. So you have to go out and make sure that, you know, Marcus Freeman talks all the time in his press conferences about guaranteed opportunities. This is your last guaranteed opportunity in the regular season. Like there is no but if. There is no but if. This is it. It's Stanford.
Trev, you ever eat something and it just stay? I wasn't done yet, Trevor. Let me finish. It's a random question, Brian, but yes, I don't know what that has to do with Notre Dame and Stanford, but whatever, dude.
Yeah,
it's your show. You're the boss.
yeah, I have. Anyways, part 3 of today's show.
Now? Thank you very much. Okay. Allow me to finish my point there, Mr. Have you ever eaten something, ... not done yet, and it's like it's got that great aftertaste, and it just kind of lingers to the point where like you don't want to brush your teeth before you go to bed, you know, like you just want to let it. I'm not sure I want to eat breakfast because it's still kind of sitting there a little bit from the night before. Like that's what you want in this game. You want the aftertaste of Notre Dame's stretch run to just be so impressive that it's like, dude, it's like you watch film of a team and then like that game is so impressive that everything else you watch is now kind of goes back to, well, man, but did you see that team over here? That's what Notre Dame and Ohio State have done the last month of the season. Indiana has not played great football down the stretch. Ole Miss has not played great football down the stretch. Georgia's playing better football, but they've also got some ugly wins mixed in there as well in these last 4 games. Like you want it to be one of those things where it's just like, when I watch other teams play, I'm comparing them to Ohio State and Notre Dame. That's how dominant you want this game to be. And, like I said, I think they can do it. Now we just need to see them do it. And there's another thing too, Trevor. Obviously, there's other aspects to what's at stake for them this weekend that aren't committee related. And we're going to dive into those next. There's really 3 things. And the first thing is the injury to Kingston Viliamasa. Obviously, it's devastating news for Notre Dame. Kingston was having a tremendous sophomore season and was just like that unique weapon that you could use as an off-ball Mike, as an off-ball Will, as a coverage player in your third down packages, as a pass rusher in your third down packages. He was, I would argue, the most versatile defensive player they have on their team in the front 7. Losing him is absolutely a blow. We are not going to sit here and be like, oh, you know what? They're so deep. It doesn't matter. It matters. He's a stud. We're not going to spin that. Having said that, fortunately for Notre Dame, it is a loaded position. But I don't want to go into the playoffs saying, well, the only opportunity we have as a team to work on our rotation and see who can do this is in the first round playoff game. The fact that it sucks to happen, but at least you have a game to say, okay, against Stanford, what's our 12 personnel package going to be? Because they got to find an answer there. The reason I say that is in 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tights, 2 receivers. So basically when teams go multiple tight ends, Notre Dame is countered with their 4-3 personnel, meaning 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and Kingston comes on the field. You're going to have to find an answer there. Do you just stick with your nickel? Do you put Madden Faramo on the field? Do you put Jalen Sneed on the field? Do you maybe go, here's the thought, do you stay nickel, but instead of Devontae Smith, do you put Luke Talich on the field to give yourself a bigger body? What's the answer there? What do you do in your nickel package? When you think of Kingston as a pass rusher, is it going to be Jalen Sneed? Is it going to be Madden? Is it going to be somebody on the board brought up Logan Thomas? What's your answer there? Is it a D lineman? Is it a linebacker? What's your answer there? And then, of course, your linebacker rotation. Are you just going to stay? It's just going to be the 3? Is it just going to be Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury, and Jalen Sneed? Or are there more opportunities for Madden Faramo to step up and play? It's pretty good when he came off the bench. I mean, the kid's first series of the game, I think he forced an interception. Was that against Purdue, right? So all those things are going to be part of, you got some answers. You have to find some answers to that. And at least you have a real game where you can try some people out in those situations. And so that's going to be something that's going to be part of this weekend as well.
Yeah, that's definitely at stake. And you never want to lose a player like Kingston. I mean, he was what Jalen Walker was to Georgia's defense. He was what Isaiah Simmons was to Clemson's defense. Not in that he was the overall best player. It's just he was the most diverse. And that really, really hurts. Now, when I look at this, what's at stake, there's the immediate impact, talking about linebacker rotation, and then all the things that you were talking about as well, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Doesn't mean another defensive lineman. Doesn't mean you bring in Luke Talich. So yes to all of those. Immediate impact, this comes down to 2 players for me. It's Jalen Sneed and Madden Faramo. When I look at Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury and what they've done this season, a lot of my messaging is, hey, kind of just keep doing what you're doing. Jaden Osbury's been balling out. He's been having one of the quieter, better second halves of the season. All players we haven't mentioned a whole lot on defense. And Drake Bowen is being who we thought he was going to be this year. So my messaging to them is be who you are. Jalen Sneed, I believe, most matches his role. Jalen Sneed is one of the only other linebackers that, I mean, before he was becoming an every down linebacker, he was that niche 3rd down pass rusher. So that kind of fills the Kingston void from a positional piece. Like if Chris Ash still wants a linebacker to rush off the edge, I would then make that Jalen Sneed's role. I don't then put Drake Bowen there.
Right.
But right. I think from an athleticism standpoint, Jalen Sneed is a very athletic linebacker as well. But I think overall, from a coverage standpoint, from a ranginess standpoint, I think Madden also best fits what Kingston did athletically for this defense. Now, he's a true freshman. You can't ask him to do schematically everything that you ask Kingston Viliamahasa to do. Mm-hmm. Not that he's physically incapable, but mentally there's going to be a gap. He's a true freshman that didn't even play as much as what Kingston did as a true freshman. Those 2 guys I'm going to be keeping my eye on for this week. Common theme from me of what I'm going to be looking for from that linebacker room. But big impact, no doubt. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Much rather figure this out against Stanford than potentially on the road in the first round of the playoffs.
Right. Where you're just hoping that it looked good in practice, so hopefully it'll look good in games, right? I mean, yes. now you can say, okay, this guy didn't do this well, or he did this well. We got to improve here, improve there. Maybe you try different things. That's something to look at too. And look, good news, Jalen Sneed's coming off 2 of his best games of the season. That's good news. Also, Jalen Sneed this year has 11 pressures on only 45 pass rush snaps. He hasn't rushed the quarterback a lot this year. Last year in 107 pass rush snaps, so over twice, 17 more than double what he has now. He had 16 pressures. So he's getting after the quarterback at a more effective rate this season than he did last year. So that's a good sign, to at least, Jalen has improved as a player. And his hit on the quarterback rate is not decreased either. So it's not like he's just getting some random hurries and not getting to the quarterback. So I think that's something that factors into this for me, Trevor, when I look at this is, he can do that. Maybe Madden can be that guy where you simplify it. Does he have the pass rushing repertoire that Kingston had? I think you're correct. Madden is more of the body type and length and twitchiness that Kingston was. But that's not why Kingston was so good there. He was good there because he just had a great feel for winning on the edge as a pass rusher. And in that it's not, like you said, it's not necessarily a linebacker that's going to fill that void. Maybe it's Logan Thomas. Maybe it's Josh Burnham plays the role that somebody else had, and then somebody else bumps out and comes off the edge. Maybe it's Jordan Patelho. Because we've seen some nickel situations where they've had Boubacar on the edge and Kingston on the edge, and then Jordan Patelho standing up over the guard. Maybe Burnham takes that role and Patelho goes out wide. So the good news is you have a lot of really talented players. Jalen Sneed, Kingston Viliama-Asa, a Josh Burnham, a Jordan Patelho, a Logan Thomas type of players that you could say, okay, maybe they take that role. Maybe it's a Bryce Young, and you just go with a bigger D-line in those situations. That's what's nice about how well they've recruited is you can suffer a devastating blow like this, and you're replacing him with a really good football player. It's like last year when they lost Boubacar. That was a huge blow. And then lost Patelho. Huge blow. But you're replacing them with Josh Burnham and Junior Tuihalamaka, who are also really good football players. You lose Benjamin Morrison last year, and you replace him with who? Leonard Moore. You lose Riley Mills in the first round of the playoffs. And I would argue that was a more crushing loss that was harder to replace than even this. And that's not at all to diminish that's not about who's better, Riley or Kingston. It's more so you didn't have anybody that was like Riley on the roster last year. You have some guys that have some skill sets that are similar to Kingston. They're not as good as Kingston, but you have those skill sets. And you were able to survive that because you were able to play more, Gabriel Rubio more, and so this team is better positioned to handle an injury like this than a lot of other teams, even as devastating as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. All encompassing, what we're saying is very similar to the conversation around replacing Riley Mills that we were talking about with this defensive line in the offseason. You're not going to replace Kingston Viliama-Asa with just a guy. You're not. You have to talk about replacing his production and his impact with multiple people. That's why we laid out all these options of it could be Sneed, it could be Faremo, it could be Logan Thomas, it could be Junior Tuihalamaka, it could be Luke Talich. So it will be a collective effort. But right now the defense is humming in a spot where now Chris Ash has a better idea of his personnel. Max Bulla has a really strong idea of his personnel. Marcus Freeman laid out some things in today's press conference about the different options that they have. So yeah, man, this is going to be, it's going to be one that will be a collective effort.
The one question I have about Madden is, do you just want to have him get ready to be the number 2 Mike and not put more on his plate? Or do you think he's prepared to handle more of an expanded role? And like the other thing to me is, yes, I want to have a backup for Drake Bowen ready to rotate in against Stanford. I do not care about taking Drake Bowen off the field in the playoffs. You have enough time between each game. You've had a month off. You don't need your backup Mike in those games to be ready to take the reps that Kingston had at Mike. You need to have somebody ready to take over should Drake go down. So it's not like it's not important. But I don't have to force the issue of playing a second Mike in the playoffs. Rotations don't become as important in the playoffs as they are in the regular season. You've had a month off. You're going to have at least a week off between every game. They're just not as important. So the least important of all the things that Kingston did was the backup to Drake. Yeah. What I'm more bummed about is that we aren't going to get any more of Drake and Kingston on the field together because you and I have pointed out before, that's when this defense gets really nasty.
Yeah.
But Jaden Alsbury's playing as good as he's played all year. I mean, his whole career right now. He's on a really hot streak. Jalen Sneed didn't play well against Navy, but 3 of his last 4 games, he's played very well. Even the BC game, he played very well. He just had that dumb penalty in the game. Outside of that dumb penalty, he played really good football. So he's playing really good football right now. Again, you don't want to lose Kingston. We are not going to sit here and try to act like no big deal. He's a stud. And when you lose a stud who can do so many different things, that hurts you. What we are saying, however, is this is why you build your roster the way that they've built their roster. So you can handle when these things happen. And you can sustain elite play when you lose a guy, just like they did last year when they lost Patelho, Bubakar, Riley Mills, Benjamin Morrison, all during the season. And they were still able to go out there and play big-time football until the title game when they played the hottest team in the country.
Let's switch this conversation to the offensive side of the ball here, Brian, because what else is at stake in this one is it's also your last chance to get your pass game rolling heading into the postseason. Now, we broke this down, and upon further review, it's up on the message boards right now, boards.irishbreakdown.com. You're going to want to make sure that you check that out. But one of the keys to victory was enhance the pass game. Now, we saw them do some things schematically, but again, your starting quarterback threw 9 passes against Syracuse because you rushed for over 300 yards as a team. This is your last chance to kind of get it rolling in a game setting, because similar to the conversation, the way that I look at this is similar to the conversation we had about the linebackers, and you don't want to test out Madden Framo and figure out linebacker rotations in the first game of the playoffs. You also don't really want to be in a situation where it's like, we haven't really seen CJ Carr. We know that he can, but it's been like a month and a half since we've kind of seen him turn it up on a defense a little bit. You're going to want to make sure that you do that against Stanford as well.
It was really just one of those things where it was obvious coming into the game that they wanted to do that, but the game just got out of hand so quickly that you didn't have a chance to really do that without looking like you were running up the score.
Yeah.
And the thing that I appreciate about what Notre Dame did on Saturday is they ran up the score without running up the score. You know what I mean? Like you put Jeremiah Love in for one series in the second half. You put your starting offense in for one series the second half, and on the third play, he goes for a 68-yard touchdown, and then you pulled all the starters. And your last 2 touchdowns of the game came with your backups on the field. If Notre Dame wanted to score 90 points in that game, they could have easily. But I think that this game you're going to need that more. Last game was just one of those things. You don't replicate 2 pick sixes and a blocked front for a touchdown. You don't. Now, like to me, I'd say a normal game is you do one of those 3 things and then you score 49 points on offense. And look, the way that the offense was playing, they still might have won 70-7 if they didn't get those plays. The offense, so they went 2 plays and a touchdown on their first drive. Well, maybe that happens after the 7-0 pick six if they have to punt. They punt to Notre Dame and now it's 14-0, and then you force let's say Leonard Moore, all he does is break up that pass, and you punt it to him again, and Notre Dame scores 3 plays later, and it's 21-0, and you're still, 4 or 5 minutes left in the first quarter. You know what I mean? Like, and then maybe the pass game could have done more things. Maybe there would have been a post shot over top to Malachi Fields or something like that, and they still would have won 63-7, 70-7, because the offense they scored 49 points on 39 plays. If you give them 10 more plays, because of you don't have the pick sixes in the pump, and then all of a sudden we're looking at what? You're still close to 60-some points at minimum for what they would have got from an offensive standpoint. So it's I'm actually curious about that now, Trevor, because it just popped in my head, and this is now gonna be something that is gonna bother me if I don't figure it out now. But Notre Dame scored 49 points on 39 plays, so that's basically 1.25 points per play. Notre Dame on offense this year has average. They have. Well, let me see here. What is their total plays? So just give me 1 second. So they had 678 plays. Let's take away the 39 they had against them. So that's 639 divided. So 63.9 plays per game, 63.9. So try to remember that number. If they would have got 64 plays at their normal rate of what they were scoring on a per point basis, if they would have actually, that's not, I'm not even going to do that because that proved my point too much. So let's just say we'll go round down 63.9. Let's round down and they only run 63 plays. At the mark they were scoring, that would have get them to 79 points. Notre Dame's offense scored at a rate that would have allowed them to score 79 points if they would have just had their season average of snaps in a game. So it was still dominant, but what it did was it took away your chance to really run your offense the way you wanted to run your offense. So now CJ Carr's most recent game where he was really able to kind of be in the flow, he threw 2 picks. You know, you did some good things, but some not good things that you wanted to work out against Syracuse. Well, now you want to work those things out against Stanford. That's the long, short story long. That's kind of what we're getting at here is you want to be able to work those things out and go into the postseason with a little bit more momentum.
Last thing here that's at stake for Notre Dame, and you talked about this before we got going on this show here, and I love that we added this. This is also the final opportunity to make a push for Jeremiah Love's Heisman case. And I love that we're having this conversation right now. I mean, because of the week that he had this past weekend, Jeremiah Love now has the 3rd best odds on FanDuel to win the Heisman Trophy, and he's only 50 points behind Julian Sain. Right now on FanDuel. Is he
closer to number 1 or is he closer to number 3?
He's close. He's definitely closer to number 4 than he is number 1.
Okay.
Fernando Mendoza has minus 125 odds to win the Heisman. Okay. I'm just not there. Julian Sain has plus 400 odds. Jeremiah Love is at plus 450. Diego Pavia is at plus 550. All those are on FanDuel.
I just don't get it with Mendoza. I really don't.
It's got to just be the storyline of IU and all that stuff. I'm assuming
it's just 2 best odds are the quarterback for the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. That's what it is. That's as lazy as it is. So when you talk about what's at stake this weekend, this is going to be an interesting one for Marcus Freeman because Marcus Freeman can't go in there with his team and say, fellas, let's go do this for J Love. Let's go win him a Heisman. Let's go. You can't do that because that goes against everything that you stand for as a coach. Now, what he's not doing and what I appreciate is that here's where I'm at. Here's what they should have done. Or here's what you can't do. You can't say, hey, we're going to do this. But what you are doing that I like is they're not pushing back against the push for Jeremiah Love. Like, he's not like, guys, I don't want to talk about Jeremiah Love and the Heisman. This is a team thing. He's not. He's answering those questions. He's embracing those questions. But you can't then go into the locker room and be like, all right, boys, let's do this for Jeremiah. Let's get him a Heisman. He can't do that. This has got to be a player-driven thing. You're playing a team that stinks. I know they stink. You know they stink. The chat knows they stink. And the Notre Dame players know they're not very good. Now, are they going to battle? Yes. Are they coached well? Yes. They're just not very talented. The Notre Dame players know that. I think there's some rivalry aspects that will keep them focused. But where's the player leadership to say, hey, boys, we got to do our jobs because that's what our job is, our responsibilities are. However, let's take this thing to another level because we want to make sure that number 4 goes out there and dominates. Don't think that's not part of the conversation. I've listened to stories about the Broncos' 1998 season. The Broncos are chasing home field advantage. They're chasing another Super Bowl. But they'll interview offensive linemen like, dude, we were out there trying to get Terrell to 2,000. Like we absolutely took pride in that because we knew if he got to 2,000, that reflected on us. So does the leadership in the offensive line room, Emil Wagner, Billy Schrauth, Ashton Craig, I know that 2 of those guys aren't playing. They're still leaders in that locker room. Anthony Knapp is becoming more and more of a leader by example in that room by how he goes about his business. Do they say to themselves, hey, boys, let's really make sure we have a locked-in great week of practice because we want to go out there and have another week like we did last week because we want Jeremiah to put on another show because we want to show the country that we have the best player in college football and he gets that Heisman Trophy. Even more so than a quarterback, when a running back wins the Heisman, the offensive linemen take pride in that. What about the receivers? Hey boys, let's make sure if we get J Love in space that he's not going to get tackled because of us. Defense, Drake Bowen, where are you at? Adon Schuler, hey, let's get the ball back. Let's make sure we're doing our jobs. Let's make sure we're dominating them so we can give the offense as many opportunities to score as possible because we want to go out there and do this. I'm very curious how the leadership handles that because Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash can't be in the locker room talking about, hey, boys, let's go win this one for J-Love. Pat Bowlen said this one's for John after the game, not before the game in the 1997 Super Bowl against the Packers. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very curious to see, Trev, what the leadership of this team, how it handles this last chance to make the push for Jeremiah Love to win a championship or to win the Heisman Trophy. I think right now, barring him just doing nothing, I think he's a lock to be in New York. Now, that's not based off betting odds. That's based off voting. And you have to finish in a certain range to be in there. I mean, they're not going to bring him in there if he finished 6th. But you've got this opportunity here to solidify him being not only a finalist, but potentially the winner. Now, if Mendoza or Sand goes into the Big Ten title game and just lights up the other team, it's going to be hard for him to do that. But those two defenses are good enough that I don't know either one of those guys are going to light up that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we talked about with Notre Dame for the playoff committee. This is Jeremiah Love's last opportunity to leave that taste in your mouth like, dude, this guy put on an absolute show. And you're seeing more and more people say this. I think college football nerds today said, can we just give Jeremiah Love the Heisman? Now, I don't think they were being sarcastic. Maybe I'm wrong. Booger McFarland from ESPN had a comment today basically saying he is the one player that you can look at and say he is the best player in college football. You're starting to get more and more of that hype. And if you go out there and follow up last week with another big game this week against a much better run defense, then he has a chance to make a huge statement. And how does a team handle that in their preparation?
I mean, first and foremost, I think we saw this a little bit in 2023 when there was a push to try to get Audric Estime to win the Doak Walker Award because he had statistically a very good season in 2023. I think there's a little bit of that too at the final game of the year. I mean, Sam Hartman was not playing well against Stanford in that game, so I understand why they kind of leaned on the run game a little bit more. But we are talking about a running back who finished the game with 238 yards and 4 touchdowns. What Audric did against Stanford in the final game of the regular season in 2023. I think there was a little bit of juice in that too. The offensive line took a little bit of pride in what was going on there. But to your point about national people having more, I mean, look, never thought I'd say this, I think, in my life. But honestly, shout out to Desmond Howard, somebody who won a Heisman Trophy and understands what it takes to win a Heisman Trophy. I watched that segment on College Game Day.
You're the one that told me about it.
Yeah. Like I watched that segment on College Game Day where they were going over the odds and I think it's Mendoza. I think it's Sand. And then Desmond Howard's like, why are we just assuming that a quarterback is going to win it? And he pointed like he had this like long pointer thing and was like, Julian Saint's not even the best player on his team. So how can he be the best player in the country? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not taking it. Julian Saint's having a great year.
Yeah.
But he's not even the best player on their team. He's not even the second best player on their team.
No.
And Caleb Downs is a better player than him.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately for Julian Saint, this isn't his fault, but his numbers have also taken a dip after Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate went out. Right. Jeremiah Love is running behind an offensive line that lost one of its offensive captains and its starting center this year and is still putting up Heisman numbers. So it's like, you got guys like Joe Tessitore.
That's a great point. He's putting up all these monster numbers, and it all started against USC, and that's the first game Notre Dame played without Ashton Craig. He has not during this dominant stretch. He's not played one game with the starting, and I don't even mean not having Jagasol. I mean just game one. This is your starting offensive line. All the dominance he's done the last 5-6 games. He's built the backup. I never even thought about that, Trev. It's an elite point.
Yeah, I mean it's so for everybody talk about Julian Saint had to do this because his best weapons are out. It's like what's a running back's best weapons? The guy's blocking for him.
Mm-hmm.
And they are without one of their offensive captains and arguably best offensive linemen. His left tackle is a true sophomore. His right guard's a redshirt freshman, and his center is going into like his sixth start. Left guard's going into his fifth start, and he's doing this. So, yeah, man, you got guys like Joe Tessitore talking about how he's the best player in college football. It's not a mystery that when people watch him in person, they come away being like, yeah, guys, this is the best player in college football. I mean, that's not a coincidence. Like Jeremiah Love after the game isn't going and slipping him a 20 and saying like, hey, thanks for kind of propping me up. No, man. I mean, I'm with you. But I will say we have watched this team kind of do that before and rally around a cause. I think they did that a little bit with Audric in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, if Jeremiah Love has the kind of game Audric did, 200-plus rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, I think you can just hand him the trophy. I mean, I honestly think that. I just think it would be that kind of performance. The question is, will he get that many opportunities? I mean, Jeremiah Love's not a guy that's throwing up a lot of numbers. I also want to push back on some of the people that were like, well, what are you doing against Miami? There's some idiot that covers Georgia. I won't even say his name. I can't stand that guy. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Just an absolute clown. Talked about, well, he only rushed for X number of yards against Texas A&M. And somebody's like, you're just going to ignore the fact he had like 50. Well, I prefer a running back that does things on the ground. And I'm like, you're a clown. We're just going to ignore the one-handed catch he had against Texas A&M for a 30-something yard touchdown. Sure, buddy. Just admit, people, that you're not a serious person. But I just want to give you Jeremiah Love's numbers this year against ranked teams. So in the last 3 games against ranked teams, he has rushed for 156.3 yards per game against those 3 ranked teams. If you look at Jeremiah Love's performance on the season against ranked teams that were ranked when the game was played, that includes Miami, he has had, let's see here, I'm going to just add these all together. He has rushed for 147. He has rushed for an average of 119.2 yards per game against ranked opponents. Just for context, 119.2 yards per game would put him for 3rd in the country, right where he is now. His average against the 5 ranked teams is higher than his overall season average. On the season, he's at 118. He's at 118.7 for the season. He's at 119.2 against the 5 ranked teams that they've played. That's a pretty good performance. So let's real quick, let's take out the Navy game. Let's say Navy won't be ranked this weekend. Okay, let's just take the 4 teams that we anticipate being ranked at the end of this weekend. Miami, A&M, USC, and Pitt. His yards per game in those 4 games, 125.5. So his best football has been against the 4 ranked opponents. Now, did he play well against Miami? Not really, because the offensive line got dominated by that game. But, A&M, he had over 130 yards of offense. And that's just rushing. I didn't even put in receiving yards or any of that stuff. That's just rushing. So he has all the metrics you look for. Numbers overall, tops in the country. Does he play well in big games? He ran for 228 yards against a ranked USC team in a night game with the whole country watching. Noon game days in town. Everybody's watching. Number 3 rush defense in the country. Late season game. Top 25 matchup. He goes for a $147 against the number 3 rush defense in the country and has one of the most impressive runs that anybody's seen. He's doing it in the moments that matter as well. Not just rushing. He's not rushing for 228 against Arkansas and Purdue. He's putting up those numbers against the best teams that they play. He only had 157 yards against Arkansas. He only had 86 against NC State. He only had 94 against Navy. The teams that everybody says, oh, they're not any good. He's been dominant.
I don't want to hear anything about a Georgia analyst or whoever talking about Jeremiah Love's performance against Texas A&M. If you take Jeremiah Love's 94 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown and, excuse me for a second, 53 receiving yards and a touchdown, that automatically becomes Nate Frazier's second best game and Chauncey Bowen's best game of the season. You can miss me with that whole thing. I'm sorry. A team that hasn't had an 1,000-yard rusher since 2019 is going to talk about what a good rushing performance looks like. You got to sit this one out. I'm sorry.
It was just that lazy. Well, he hasn't done against the best teams they play. And I'm like, and this is the typical lazy BS crap we get from so many people that cover teams now. It's like, Trev, you and I have been all year talking about how good Ahmed Hardy is. We've never tried to spin him as not being a good player because we want Jeremiah Love to look better. I don't need to spin that because Jeremiah Love's production speaks for itself. But when people have to lie and hold back things and say, well, I don't really count receiving yards. Well, that's stupid. He's just going to say, well, Reggie Bush, we shouldn't count his punt returns, kick returns, and receiving yards for, in 2005. It's stupid. But real people that have a say, not some loser on Twitter that just likes to say things. Because here's why they say that. Honestly, A, they're idiots. B, because they know it's going to piss off Notre Dame fans, and they're going to get thousands and thousands and thousands of Notre Dame fans jumping in there to respond to them. And guess what that does? Engagement. I'm getting paid. So like I'm verified on X. I chose not to monetize my X page because nobody can ever say you're doing that to get paid. No, I'm not getting paid by Twitter. I don't work for Twitter. That's why I don't put a lot of Notre Dame stuff out there, like, other than posting articles. That's why I don't do live in-game stuff. I do it on the board. But the real ones, the analysts, the people that actually their reputation comes on, you've got to be somewhat realistic. Those people, they're the ones now saying, this cat, even people that don't think Notre Dame should be in the playoff and all that are saying, but that's the best player in college football right there. And you get one more shot to prove that to everybody. And I'm very curious how the Notre Dame players handle that. Because as I said, you can't promote that if you're Marcus Freeman. Now, that doesn't mean in the coach's room, hey, Mike Denbrock, what's our game plan looking like? Hey, let's leave maybe, let's be very mindful of we want to give Jeremiah a shot to win this, but not overdoing it where we expose him to injury because our goal is still this. Those are some very interesting conversations that Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock need to have. But you can't walk into the team room and say, hey, let's do this for Jeremiah. You can't. You can't. You have to say, guys, it's still about the team. It's going to be up to Emil Wagner, Anthony Knapp, Drake Bowen, Adon Schuler, like the player leadership that says, hey, guys, we've got this goal right here in front of us, and that's what we're playing for. But you know what, Up? We're going to take it to another level because we also want to get our boy the Heisman. You know what I mean? And so I'm very curious to see how that goes. Very curious.
Folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We are wrapping everything up today with a mailbag, so be sure to get those questions in. But before we get there, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. And as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in the final part of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we got a mailbag to take us home. And again, if this does happen to be your first mailbag, it's the end of the season. We get some different, fans of different teams in here. The Irish Breakdown is consistently growing. So if this does happen to be your first mailbag, put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji. That lets us know to set your question aside. Now, the fact of the matter is we can't go forever as much as I'm sure we would both like to. So if you want to make sure that your question gets answered, you can always throw in a super chat, which I do think we have a couple of those to get us started off today, Brian.
Yeah, we'll get started with the super chats here. We got one from John Emerson. He said, thank you, John, for the super chat. He says, I bet 75 at plus 5,000 for Jeremiah Love to win the Heisman in February. Should I cash it out or let it ride? Trevor, I will let you handle that one.
Yeah, I mean, John, I'm always a let it ride person. I get greedy. I think it really depends on what your cash out is. What's your total payout going to be, like $25.50? I would assume. So you could definitely cash it out. I think it depends on what your cash out is because you're Xing your money. But I mean, look, man, I think he's in a really good position, But depending on what your cash out is, maybe not. I am always a let it ride person,
especially at $75. I mean, what would the payout be if he wins it at that?
Like 25 to $3,000, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Let it ride, baby.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. What do you think of Florida State sticking with Norvell? And what did you think of James Franklin wanted that Florida State job instead of the Virginia Tech job?
I think James Franklin was very intrigued by the Florida State job. I think ultimately he decided Virginia Tech was the best because James Franklin could have easily just gone to ESPN and worked for a year, made a boatload of money from his buyout, and then gotten the Florida State job next year. If he really wanted the Florida State job, he could have taken it. I think he did the math and did the factoring and said, this is a better situation for me in this current landscape. And I think the Florida State job is a toxic job right now.
Yeah.
Because you're not just dealing with a school that doesn't have a great money situation. You're also dealing with a school that's spending a lot of its money on what? Suing the ACC to get out of think of the money they've spent on that lawsuit.
Yeah.
You have a school that has not really it's not a great school. It's not like Florida. It's not like Miami academically. It doesn't have the donor base of other schools, but the expectations are still really high to win there. Where you go to Virginia Tech, and maybe you won't ever have the roster that you could at Florida State if you do it right, but you're going to have a top 3 to 4 roster every year if you do it right. And the expectations are high, but not Florida State high. They also are a very good NIL school. What people don't realize, Virginia Tech is a really good school that produces some pretty successful donors in the state of Virginia. And they're very committed to winning in football. And you make the playoff. Here's the difference between the two jobs, ultimately, Trevor. You make the playoff once every 6 or 7 years, you are not losing your job unless you have a bunch of 3-9, 4-8 seasons. You only make the playoff once in 5 years at Florida State, you're out of a job, potentially. That's the difference. And I think more and more coaches are doing the math saying, okay, I can make an extra $1.5 million there per year, but if I stay here twice as long, I'm going to make more money. And most coaches don't want the buyout. Most coaches want to coach. James Franklin wants to coach. He doesn't want to collect the buyout. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't want his money that's owed to him, but he wants to coach. And I think that's why that happened. Now, that's my thoughts on the second one. I'll answer the first one here, Trev, and then I'd like to get your thoughts. I think it was the only move they had was to keep Norvell. You don't have the money to pay him out. Your school does not have the money to pay him out, and then also pay a buyout to get a coach that you want. It's not a great market. Who are the big names you're going to go out and you're going to fire Mike Norvell to go get what? Alex Golesh? Maybe John Sumrall. Are you going to go get Deion right now, who's in the midst of it? If Deion Sanders had a second straight 9-3 season, maybe you could make a run at an alum, but I'm not going to go hire Deion now. Who's the coach you're going to go get? You're not even a top 5 job on the market right now. I don't think. That's at least debatable, but you're not a better job than Florida. You're not a better job than LSU. You're not a better job than Penn State. I think Florida State's more in the debate with Virginia Tech right now in the current landscape, not historically and all, saying where things are right now with all the different things going on with that school and the money they got to pay. I think they're closer to Virginia Tech than they are those 3 big schools. So I'll say they're a top 5 job, but they're not sniffing the top 3. I don't think it's a better job than Auburn right now. So now they're battling for that number 5 spot. So who are you going to hire that's going to really blow you away? Man, Mike Norvell's not doing a good job. There's no doubt. But I think it's actually kind of smart and also just a necessity. I don't think they really could afford to fire him. With all the money they spent on lawsuits, they just raised a bunch of money to renovate the stadium, and then they'd have to buy him out on a big buyout number, and then they'd have to buy out whoever they wanted to replace him with. That's a 9-figure deal. Like his buyout, all your assistant coaches' buyouts. I promise you, Gus Malzahn does not have a small buyout for an OC. Plus, buying out your new staff, they don't have that.
Yeah, Tyler, to answer your first question, I think the only option that Florida State had was firing Mike Norvell and then promoting Gus Malzahn. Like, I really think that was, and if you're going to have Gus Malzahn as your head coach, you might as well just keep Mike Norvell as your head coach, in my opinion. I'm impartial to it. Mike Norvell is not the coach to get them over the hump. He lives and dies by the transfer portal. And like we've seen every single year, it's either short-lived success or no success. And he's put himself out into a position where he's going to be going into his 5th year at Florida State next year, 6th year at Florida State next year. And he's having to rebuild what he essentially tore down. Like, that's a bad spot to be in. They're at a loss. Florida State's just going to have to accept that they're going to be bad next year as well, unless they want to try once again to be transfer portal merchants and see if it works out better this time. And it's really a flip of a coin, and arguably not even a flip of a coin, because it's not 50-50 success rate. It just isn't. Even the outliers have reasons as to why, like, people point to Indiana and how you can have success in the portal. Like we've said multiple times on this show, that is a different situation. As far as James Franklin, I understand it. I mean, look, I give James Franklin a lot of credit for getting Penn State turned around from, like, all the sanctions that were imposed on that program when he took over as head coach. They had all those bans. That was that, scandal coming out of Penn State when he took over as head coach. So I think he is on a short list of coaches that could come in and turn it around. Then you start talking about fit, and I think he's a much better fit at Virginia Tech. I really do. So that's where I'm at with James Franklin and the Florida State job. I think James Franklin would have done a better job than Mike Norvell at Florida State. I think he's a better fit.
He would have recruited in high school. He would have done high school recruiting.
Yes.
More so than building in the portal. 100% agree. Mike Norvell's not a very good recruiter. At least not now. And his staff hasn't been good recruiters. I am so glad that James Franklin took the Virginia Tech job. I think that's for college football, that's a much better situation. And I think, Trev, you nailed it. The fit there is perfect.
Yeah.
His personality, his upside is greater at a place like Virginia Tech. It fits better there. And all the areas you need to recruit at Virginia Tech, he's been recruiting for a decade. Yeah. Longer, because he was at Maryland for a long time as well as an assistant coach before he went to Penn State. Now, he was at Vandy and he had but he was at Maryland for a long time as an assistant. That's where I first met James Franklin, was working the Maryland camps, because Maryland was one of the states I had to recruit when I first got into coaching. And him and Billy O'Brien were on that staff at Maryland back then, with Ralph Friedgen. So, I mean, he recruits all those years, all those areas, and that's perfect for Virginia Tech. So I was glad to see he did that.
Super chat from Michael S. Appreciate the super chat. The Kellys really suckered 2 schools, UCLA and LSU. What do you think is next for them?
I don't get the UCLA one. Did I miss something? Michael, could you kind of fill us in on what you mean by UCLA?
Hey,
I don't understand that one, but he definitely suckered. Chip Kelly. That's Chip Kelly. All right, that makes sense. All right, thanks for everybody in the chat. That makes sense. I disagree with that. I don't think Chip Kelly suckered UCLA. I think Chip Kelly did a good job at UCLA. I mean, they're a lot less successful now. I mean, his last 3 years, he took them to a bowl game. 8-4, 9-4, 8-4, 9-4, 8-5 in his 3 years there. His last 3 years there. I think he suckered him into that. I think UCLA would love to have that kind of record right now. I think he more suckered Pete Carroll more than anything else in Oakland. But yeah, I think Brian Kelly absolutely suckered LSU though, and I don't mean that like, oh, I hate Brian Kelly. I mean, he was not the coach people portrayed him to be. And I was listening to Bruce Feldman talk about Brian Kelly the other day, and it just really pissed me off, because I'm like, all these things he's saying about like the job that he did at LSU, and he's doing all this research into the job he did. I'm like, where were you guys when I was saying this for years at Notre Dame? Where was your intellectual curiosity about the job Brian Kelly was doing at Notre Dame? You guys just bought his lies. But then he does it at a place like LSU because he doesn't win, and you guys want to say all this. And maybe you're looking back and saying, you know what? Matt Bayless, Mike Elko, Clark Lee, Marcus Freeman were all there. Mike Denbrock was his OC. They've all won away from Kelly. Maybe that's the reason Notre Dame was actually good and not Brian Kelly. And you're finally realizing what I was telling people for years. They're winning in spite of Brian Kelly. Well, at LSU, he didn't have those kind of assistants. He didn't hire those kind of assistants at LSU.
He had Mike Denbrock and then ran him out. So
Exactly. And that was also the only 2 10-win teams he had. Just want to point that out as well. Was with Mike Denbrock.
All I know is free my boy BK. Free my boy.
Yeah, that was gross. I normally don't talk about people's children, but he's said enough things about me to warrant it, and he's an adult. That kid's a clown.
Wild.
Like, your father's not your boy, number one. He's not in prison. He got fired because he sucks at his job, just like he did at Notre Dame, but he doesn't have Marcus Freeman and Clark Lee and Mike Elko and Matt Bayless and Harry Heastan to bail him out anymore. That's the difference. He is a fraud. Yes, 100% correct. He lost his way a while ago. A long while ago. So, yeah. Real quick, Michael S., how does KVA's injury affect the defense? Michael, he put this in at the very beginning of the show. We've obviously answered that question, but I did want to recognize and appreciate your super chat, but we obviously were able to address that, but I did want to say thanks for the super chat, Michael.
Super chat from Dis6900. Maybe, thank you for the super chat. Maybe I'm being way too much of a homer, but I was at the game Saturday, and Notre Dame is winning the national championship this year. Most balanced, dominant Notre Dame football team I've seen in my 32 years of watching Notre Dame football.
Well, I mean, I don't know that makes you a homer. I don't think that, because I've heard people that aren't Notre Dame fans say this, that they can beat anybody. I'm not ready to say this. What I'm ready to say is if Notre Dame gets in, they can beat anybody by just playing their game. I don't know that was true last year. I don't know that they could just play their game and beat Ohio State. I don't know that they could just play their game and maybe beat Oregon. I think they had to play their best game and beat those teams. I think if Notre Dame plays their game this year, they can beat anybody, including Ohio State. Doesn't mean they will, because those teams are, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, A&M to a degree, all have things that they can do that can hurt Notre Dame and prevent Notre Dame from playing their best game.
Yeah.
Or playing their game. But I just feel like Notre Dame, I'll say it again, I think just watching football last month of the season, Notre Dame and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. And I don't know that there's a close third. Indiana's not playing good football last month of the season. Indiana was way better at the beginning and the middle. They have not played good football down the stretch. Georgia's playing better football, but they've been a little bit of this the last few games, really good against, but they're peaking. Like their last 2 games were really good. I don't count Charlotte. I mean, they didn't play great against Charlotte. Don't care. Like Charlotte's terrible. Like Charlotte's like Syracuse is like, man, those guys suck. You know what I mean? Like that's how bad Charlotte is,
It's because they don't have Omega Blake anymore, dog.
That's right. So to me, I just feel like this team can beat anybody. But that doesn't mean that they will. I think Oregon last year could have beat anybody on any given Saturday. Doesn't mean they were going to. I think this team has a little bit more character than that Oregon team had, but I think this team can play with anybody. This team has fewer weaknesses than last year. And the reason I say that, last year's team, their game, like if they play their game, that last year's team was here. And it was very good. But when this team plays their game, it's up here. And that's the difference for me.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, man. Look, appreciate the super chat. I don't think you're being too much of a homer, but at the end of the day, was it a dominant win? Yes. Was it the most dominant win I've ever seen Notre Dame have in my lifetime as well? Yes, it is. Them beating Syracuse in that fashion is not enough for me to trigger saying they are definitively winning the national championship this year, because they're not going to face a Syracuse level team in the playoffs, unfortunately. Now, I agree with everything that Brian said. They can compete with anybody in the country, but I'm also not banking on them starting a game in the playoffs, pick 6, punt block return for a touchdown, pick 6, 58-yard touchdown on their second offensive play.
I think the second half of his comment speaks more to the overall team ability than just like, I think it's not so much where I'm coming from, Trev, and I know you agree, to kind of speak to what this is saying. It's not so much how they beat Stanford or Syracuse. It's the fact that they have the ability to dominate the way that they did.
Sure.
And how does that translate against other teams is going to be a key. I mean, like this team is when they're locked in, this team is scary good. But then this team also can look kind of not scary good when they're not locked in, like we saw on the first Saturday of November against Boston College. So that's great. This team is still not peaked, Trevor. They haven't. And that's the exciting thing. But they're playing their best football down the stretch, and that's really where you want to be. It's not the end-all be-all because Ohio State definitely was not playing their best football down the stretch last season. But they were able to regroup in the period in between. But it certainly helps to be playing their best football. Notre Dame was playing pretty darn good football going into the playoffs last year too, and they were able to keep that going.
Super chat from James Salumi. Appreciate the super chat. What do we think has to happen for Love in the final opportunity in front of voters? What has to happen with Mendoza and Sane with 2 opportunities left, most likely one of them being against each other?
So it's really threefold for me. Number one is I don't know that Fernando Mendoza can do anything against Purdue that's going to help his cause or at all. He could hurt his cause by not playing well. But if he goes 10 of 12 for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, it doesn't help his cause. It doesn't hurt his cause. And I think they're going to annihilate Purdue. And knowing Kurt Cignetti, they'll probably just throw it all over the field and let him get 300 yards in the first half or something like that. So I don't know that necessarily matters a whole lot. So looking at it from a Jeremiah Love standpoint, however long you play against Stanford, whether it's 2 quarters, 3 quarters, or 4 quarters, you got to have a big game. That could mean 125 yards on 7 carries. It could mean 160 yards on 12 carries. I don't know what that's going to look like, but you have to have a big game. You got to handle your business first and foremost. That's simple. Then after that, I do think you need a little bit of help to win it all, in my opinion, because I think there's just too many people that there's a reason this has become a quarterback-driven award because the media voters, keep voting for quarterbacks. You know, like I saw Matt Leinart, who has a vote, doing his, and he had Fernando Mendoza number 1 and Jeremiah Love, I think he had like number 2 or 3. No Jacob Rodriguez, no Jeremiah Smith, because that's the voters have turned it into a quarterback award. And so you have to kind of be above and beyond as a non-quarterback. And like we saw last year, Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty had a historic season, and Travis Hunter was the most unique college football player since Champ Bailey. You know, as far as a guy that's a legitimate impact player on both sides of the ball. So I think you got to handle your business. Point 2 is you need Julian Sand not to go off in his last 2 games. If Julian Sand goes out there and rips up Michigan and rips up Indiana, he's winning the award. If Fernando Mendoza goes out there and rips up Ohio State or has some dramatic, great late game heroics to win them the game, then he's going to win it. So you almost kind of want whoever wins that game, you want it to be an ugly game. You want it to be more of a defensive struggle that looks a lot like last year's, Indiana-Ohio State game, where neither offense did a whole lot in that game. That's exactly how you want that game to go. Neither quarterback did a whole lot in the Indiana-Ohio State game last year. Actually, let me pull this up here real quick. Ohio State won 38-15. We've talked about this. It was not a pretty game. Curtis Rourke went 8 of 18 for 68 yards. Will Howard was solid, 22 of 26 for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Ran for -1 yards and a touchdown. Is that enough against a team like Indiana to get Julian Sand over Jeremiah Love? Maybe-ish. You know, but like you just want them not to go off because I do think he needs help. If I had to vote, and I don't have any votes for any major awards, Jeremiah Love is my top player in college football right now. And I can feel comfortable saying that and not be accused of being a homer because I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of people that are saying this. So I think anyone saying that Diego Pavia should win it is also utter nonsense because this is not an MVP award. It's a most outstanding award. He's not even the best quarterback in the SEC, in my opinion. He is like this is the thing we were talking about the other day, Trevor. This isn't an MVP award. This is the most outstanding award. Diego Pavia has completely changed the dynamic of that Vanderbilt football team. Curtis Mendoza has made Indiana a much better football team than they were last year. He is the reason I think they have a legit shot to win multiple games in the playoffs. Not saying they will, they have a shot. Diego Pavia is the primary reason that Vanderbilt is 10-2 and not 8-4. Would you agree with those two statements? That does not mean he's the best player in college football, because he's not. Neither of them are. And this is supposed to go to the most outstanding player, not the most valuable. Because if it was an MVP award, I would argue that you could say Jeremiah Love's not the most valuable player, because if he got hurt, you could put in Jadarian Price, and he's going to be putting up some, great numbers. Not like Jeremiah, but great numbers. Where you take Pavia or Mendoza off of Indiana and Vanderbilt, they're not as good. That says more about the team, and that says value. This is not an MVP award. It's the most outstanding award. And that's why neither of those guys, in my opinion, should be in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, James, to answer your super chat first and foremost, Jeremiah Love just kind of has to keep doing what he's been doing since USC. Just play your game. Play your game, which I think is going to be a very interesting facet. We talked about earlier what the coaches kind of have at stake for them, and what, maybe Marcus Freeman pulls aside Mike Denver and says, hey, what's the game plan for this? If I'm Jaywan Sider, I'm also pulling aside Jeremiah Love and reiterating, hey, just play your game. Because Jeremiah Love also knows that this is his last opportunity to make an impression on the Heisman voters. If you just do what you've been doing, being the patient runner, the impactful runner, ripping off big plays, being a member of the pass game, you don't have to go out and try to hurdle every defender that comes your way, which he's done a really good job of not trying to do this season. Play your game. I think Jeremiah Love, that's what I think has to happen. Because the numbers and the big runs that he puts up are a byproduct of him just doing his job. And that's what makes him such a lethal threat. For Mendoza and Sane, I agree with everything that you're saying. It's going to come down to the Big Ten championship, most likely, and their performances in those games. So that's really where I'm at overall with the Heisman race. If Mendoza, or I echo a lot of the same points that you said about Diego Pavia. I don't think that he should be in the Heisman race the same way that I don't think that Travis Hunter should have won the Biletnikoff Award. Heisman, sure. Biletnikoff, no. Travis Hunter was not the best wide receiver in college football last year. He wasn't. And so that would be my issue with somebody like Diego Pavia winning the Heisman. So I would argue that Travis Hunter might not have even been the best wide receiver in his conference. If you're going to be the best of something in the country, you kind of have to be the best of something in your conference first, right? Or the best of something on your team first. Like, I would argue that you could argue that Fernando Mendoza is not the best quarterback in his conference. That could go to Julian Sane. And then in the same breath, you could say, well, Julian Sane might not be and is not the best player on his team. So how can you be the best of something in the country? So that's how I view the Heisman race this season. It should be Jeremiah Love. We'll see if the voters hold up their end of the bargain, but that's where I'm at overall with the Heisman race, James.
Yeah, and I just make sure I'm clear in my response to Andrew. I don't have anybody have a problem with talking about the just insane impact that Diego Pavia's had at Vanderbilt. He's been a great player for them. He's just not the most outstanding player in the country. I think it's debatable if he's the best quarterback in their conference. It's at least debatable. I don't think he's definitely not the best player in the conference. Yeah. So anyway, it's a good discussion to have.
Super chat from Tom Connor. Thank you, Tom. Brian, just wanted to thank you. Educating other fan bases. Question, should Notre Dame run more play action?
Yes, they should. Yeah, I mean, look, they've been effective with it. And now play action to me is multiple things. And we saw them, I mean, the first play of the game on Saturday against against Syracuse was a play action pass. First play of the game against Purdue was a play action pass. We saw them hit some play action passes against Pitt and Navy. Yeah, you don't run 7-8 play action passes a game, but I think this team should run at least 4 or 5 play action passes a game.
Sure.
and I view that in the entirety of what play action is. Some of it's the flash fakes, some of it's pure pistol play action, turn around, throw a bomb, some of it's bootlegs. I think all those things should be a factor for Notre Dame more frequently than they have been. Yes, I do agree with that. Absolutely, Tom. It's a good observation.
Another super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. Could you see a coaching job open up this year like Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma and BK leaving Notre Dame?
What do you
I
think
could.
on that, Trev?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a possibility. I mean, a coach that I love that not a lot of people are talking about is Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Yeah, I'd be very interested to see what his thoughts are and I'm saying that because I genuinely don't know. Odds are he stays at Arizona State because of how crazy the coaching landscape is. I don't know if he wants to leave a secure job like Arizona State and go to a place where you can make the college football playoffs 1 year and then get fired 7 months later. I don't know if he wants to do that for more money, but he's somebody that I would keep my eye on because he fills those categories. Like he's young, up and coming coach. He's exciting. He speaks well. I have a lot of respect for what he's done, for what Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State. So maybe something there. Because I'm assuming, Tyler, you're talking along the lines of somebody that had a successful season and then goes somewhere else, like successful on paper. I mean, Oklahoma was making the playoffs all the time under Lincoln Riley. And yes, 2021 was a disappointing season, but the year that Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, like they were still an 11-win team and made a New Year's Six bowl. So yeah, I could see like a Kenny Dillingham, maybe. I'd keep my eye out on some Big 12 coaches. Nobody that I can really see from the ACC off the top of my head. But that would probably be the top one on my list.
And even that one, Trev, I don't know that those are the level of Oklahoma and Notre Dame.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like Dabo retiring would be one that could open up. That Clemson job would be a very coveted position. I could, Sark is so adamant that he's not leaving Texas for the NFL that I kind of believe him. I mean, he's not an idiot, and he's not the typical just liar that other coaches are. I don't think he is. He's always been a pretty honest guy. He has been like angrily combative to people talking about him taking an NFL job. He has to know he will get savaged if he does all that, talks all that trash, and then leaves for an NFL job. Like I'm like saying it once, hey, I'm not going to do this, and then doing it. But he's been very adamant. I don't know. I think he's got a pretty good thing going there. But then he also does enough complaining about the current landscape to make me think maybe he's not completely happy about it. I don't know, man. But I think he stays. But like, if he's just lying to everybody, I could see that, But another one is, I could see Lincoln Riley not being there next year at USC. I could see him being that guy again. I could see him bailing on USC. I could see him taking an NFL job. I'm not banking on it because I don't think he's had enough success this year to do it. But look, I just think Lincoln Riley, if the right offer comes, I think that he would do it. I do. I think he would take the job.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if anybody's going to offer him that job. I mean, do the Cowboys do it? I don't know. Like, I don't know what kind of season the Cowboys are having, but just thinking through, like, I don't see any other jobs. I mean, Cristobal's not going anywhere. Freeman's not going anywhere. Kirby's probably not going anywhere, especially with Kirby's coaching with some sass right now, dude. Like I think he's kind of gotten a little bit rejuvenated and starting to find his place a little bit in this new NIL world. You know what I mean? With some of the comments he's made after games. Like, I think Kirby's getting a little bit. I think he kind of hit a spot last year where I think there were some genuine frustrations about where the game is going. And it wasn't, he wasn't happy about it. And he's, I think, adjusted, and now he's finding success in this world. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think it's total BS rumors, but let's just say that one of the BS rumors that's true is that Kalen DeBoer is legitimately interested in the Penn State job. I don't think he is, but let's just say he does. that's one that I'd keep my eye on. Because I honestly, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? These people are never happy. Like, just, I Penn State's a much better job for him. Let's just say he felt that way. That's one to keep an eye on. I shouldn't say I think, I don't know. The Alabama and the Penn State people are all denying this isn't a real thing. But there's enough BS going on from people that know somebody who knows somebody to say, I don't think it's BS, but like it's at least worth mentioning. It did something like that where he up and leaves for Penn State. Now the Bama job comes open. But other than that, I mean, all the other Sharon Moore's not going anywhere. He's won enough this year to keep his job.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 9-2, right? I mean, if they lose to Ohio State, as long as they don't get beat 70-0, 9-3 is a nice bounce back season from what they've kind of been through with a true freshman starting a quarterback. He's not going anywhere. Michigan State's coach is not. That's not this kind of job, I don't know that there's any other jobs that would be like, like the only thing I could see is if Texas Tech gets beat in the Big 12 championship game, or let's say they lose this weekend to West Virginia. Let's just say that. Let's say Texas Tech loses this weekend to West Virginia and gets beat by BYU. Just worst case scenario, which I do not think is going to happen. Don't think that the big ups at Texas Tech, the money people, won't then try to push for Lincoln Riley to come to Texas Tech.
Let's see that.
But I just don't see that happening. I don't think Joey McGuire is going to lose this last. I think they're going to win out and win the Big 12. So those are the only other options I can think of, Tyler. I think most of those are unlikely.
Super chat from Andrew Berg. Thank you, Andrew. Who are the best and worst matchups for Notre Dame in the first round based upon the realistic options?
I don't think there's any teams that are bad matchups for Notre Dame. I'd say going out to Eugene is a challenge. It's not an easy place to go. I've talked to people that have to go. You don't just fly into Eugene and drive 20 minutes to campus. It's a tough place to get to, which makes traveling there an ordeal, which is what factors into why it's a tougher place to play. I don't know that Oregon is necessarily a terrible matchup for Notre Dame. People are going to laugh at me when I say this, and it's highly unlikely that Notre Dame and Texas Tech are going to play each other. I think Texas Tech would have to lose to West Virginia and then beat BYU, and then maybe Notre Dame's like 7 and they're 10, or Notre Dame's 8 and they're 9. I think Texas Tech is going to be a much tougher matchup for people than they think. I don't think there's enough people that recognize how good Texas Tech is on the front 7 on defense. Like their D-line and linebackers are outstanding, like legit NFL players. Yeah. Now, where I think you can take advantage of Texas Tech is I don't think their skill players are as good as other teams like Notre Dame. But in the trenches, especially on defense, that's a legit team in the trenches. I think they might be the toughest matchup for Notre Dame in the first round. I think Notre Dame beats them, but that's not, and that will not be. It'll be a lot like what the Indiana game looked like last year at the end, score-wise.
27-17 type thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good football team. Real good. I mean, yes, I want to humble their fan base and their coach, but forget all that. I'm just, as an analyst, that's a really good football team. Odds are, however, I think Texas Tech probably ends up getting a bye. If they win out, I think they get a bye. I think one of Georgia or the Indiana, I think falls out of the top 4. Because the top 4 right now it's A&M or Georgia. If one of those, I think the loser of that game could fall out and Texas Tech jumps into the top 4 and gets a bye. I could see that if they win out.
I wouldn't, and this is more for stadium than anything, kind of like what you were talking about with Eugene. I don't know the travel implications to get to Athens, but a first-round matchup in Athens would be, I wouldn't love. Like, matchup-wise, like, I think Notre Dame matches up well with Georgia. And Georgia's just a really hard team to beat at home, if I'm just being real. Like, I mean, they've lost a home game since 2019. I would predict Notre Dame to win, but just talking matchups specifically, I don't love that. I don't know what travel is like getting to Athens. I don't know what airports are around them. So that's really my only one. I agree with what you said about
right
Texas
by
Tech.
Atlanta. Right by Atlanta. It's easy to get into. It's a great stadium to be at, Trev. I really enjoyed my one game there in 19 against Georgia. Fans were great. Awesome stadium. Great press box. It's an outdoor press box, and it's right in the middle of the field. It's a great press box.
That's dope.
Dude. It's a lot of the outdoor press boxes are it's outdoors, but you still have something over you. This is down, much closer. It's a great place to watch a game. And, it gets a little chilly in December in Athens, but it would still be pretty great. But matchup-wise, I'd like Notre Dame against Georgia. And you know what? I'm saying this. Everything you said is true, and I agree with. That is a really good football team. But part of me wouldn't mind that matchup because then, okay, your starting quarterback played. We played you at your place. What other excuses do you want to make for why we keep beating you now?
Oh, sure.
There's sort of that element to it that doesn't contradict or negate anything you just said because you're just talking from playing a really good team at their place, super tough matchup. You're 100% spot on. They're very good in the very good in the trenches on the defensive side from a physicality standpoint. They don't have the athletes they've had in the past. They're very physical running the football. I would love to have a win there. Yeah. Would love to. All right. Those are the super chats. Let's get back up to the top.
Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker. Is there any chance one or both Jay Love and Jadarian Price return next season?
Jeremiah Love's not going. Jeremiah Love even said in his press conference after the game that it was he said as my career at Notre Dame comes down to a close. He's not coming back, nor should he come back.
No.
Jadarian Price, is there a chance Jadarian comes back? There's a chance. I think it's a slim one, but there's a chance. If his NFL feedback's not as good as he thinks, if Notre Dame's offering him a big bag to come back, I think he at least thinks about it, but I still think he goes as well.
And he should.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if he's going to get picked on day 2. Now, the only thing about that is this is going to be most likely be a pretty deep running back class. There's, I think you're going to have Ahmed Hardy. You're going to have the Lacey kid from Ole Miss coming out. You've got the 2 Penn State running backs. Although Nicholas Singleton's had a really rough year, but Katron Allen's had a pretty good year. It will be a deep running back class, but I still say,
I think he goes, man. He's going to test really well. I think on Mel Kiper's big board, Jay Love and Jadarian Price are running backs number 1 and 2. With running backs, you have to be real careful about going to the league with too much tread on your tires. And with his Achilles injury and him already playing in this offense for 3 years, I think he should go. As much as the Notre Dame fan in me would love to see him back in the back.
Yes. I think the only way you bring him back, too, is if it's just what he wants to do. He doesn't like his NFL feedback and say, okay, well, we'll get you a big NIL to come back. I would not try to coerce him into coming back. He's going to have his degree. He's had the big injury early in his career. Let him go get drafted. And it'll be a loss, but we'll talk about that in the offseason. Again, I'm saying what's best for Notre Dame is that Jadarian Price comes back. What's best for the young man on the football team, it's that Jadarian Price goes to the National Football League and gets drafted on day 2.
Yeah.
Will it happen? I don't know. I'm not a draft expert, but I think that would be the ideal situation.
Another one from Josh. How much of next season, if any, will KVA miss due to this injury, if you know yet?
So we don't know. We don't know what the injury was. They just told us knee injury. The beginning of Marcus Freeman's press conference today did not show live, at least when I was watching it. So part of it was cut off. I don't know if you saw that part, Trev. But the reporting is I believe that Pete Sampson said it was an ACL. Somebody told me that. I don't know if Pete said that or not. I don't think Pete Sampson put something like that out, if in fact he did say that, if he doesn't have pretty good, credible sources on it. But I don't know for sure. If it's an ACL, he won't miss much of next season. And he'll get surgery in late November. it's now more of a 6 to 8 month thing, which gets him back between June to August. So maybe misses some of the early part of the season, like maybe misses camp. There could be some things like that. I don't know that he'll be 100% for game one, but it's not like he's going to miss all year. It's not like Cooper Flanagan's injury, because Achilles are much more challenging to come back from now than knees. Guys come back from knees a lot quicker now, and a lot of times a lot stronger, especially at a position like linebacker.
Assuming all things being equal, because everybody heals from injuries differently. But I mean, Mitchell Evans tore his at like the start of November and played against Texas A&M from 23 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably say he misses the first couple games, maybe, assuming they recover at the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my guess if it is an ACL.
Yep, I agree. We did have another super chat down here.
From Beefeater ND08, thank you for the super chat. Buried in the insane stats from Saturday, James Rendell with 2 punts for 99 yards along a 50. Thor is a machine.
And he didn't even get one on very good. Like, there was one that he hit that you could tell he wasn't happy about. It just rolled.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's been excellent this year, man. He really has.
He is quietly becoming – like, he might be their second best special teams player this year behind Jadarian Price. Like, honestly. Like, James Rendell's been balling this year.
Yeah. That's not a completely yeah. Like, that's not even a complete lock to say he's number 2.
Sure.
Just from an opportunity standpoint. But, it's funny is, hold on, let me see this real quick. So he's had 22 punt opportunities, and Jadarian Price has had 12 kick return opportunities. So, yeah, he's had more opportunities. And a lot of that, dude, like, a lot of that was thanks to the flipping USC game where he had 4 punts. But, yeah, he's been very good. Very, very good. I wonder what his net the net punting average is. I have to go try and find that somewhere. But he's been very good in that regard.
Another one from Tyler Evans. What do you think of the Georgia Tech and Pitt game?
Honestly, I thought it went kind of how I thought it was going to go. I mean, I didn't predict a 99-yard pick six. I mean, those type of things you don't project. But what Trevor and I have been saying for weeks is Georgia Tech's defense is not good. And we told you guys going into the Notre Dame Pitt game that this Pitt offense is legit. They just look bad against Notre Dame because Notre Dame is that good. But, Trev, you and I have been saying this since the summer. I mean, Trev, when we did our receiver rankings, the one group that Trev wanted to say, hey, keep an eye on this group. They're not in our top 10, but keep an eye on this group was Pitt. And they've lived up to the expectations. I mean, even when Eli Holstein was at quarterback, he was still putting up yards. He just wasn't moving the offense as efficiently. He's still putting up yards. And then, of course, you've got the running back coming out of the backfield, Desmond Reed. I mean, they did all that against Georgia Tech without him. Like, their offensive line played really well in that game against Georgia Tech, much better than they did against Notre Dame for sure. That's because Georgia Tech's not as good up front as Notre Dame. But that didn't shock me at all. I mean, and the other thing I've complained about with Georgia Tech, and it's worked so far, but I did not think it was going to work against better teams, is their offense is too focused on Haynes King. Meaning if you can take him out of the game, they haven't done enough with their run game, the other backs, to really, okay, well, Haynes isn't having the game we wanted him to. What do we have? Nothing. They got nothing. And they ran out of steam. And the job they've done with Jamal Haynes this year has just been a joke. Yeah. I mean, an absolute joke what they've done with him this year.
As crazy as this sounds, I think his over-under rushing yards on FanDuel to like before the game started was like 31 and a half. That's a joke. Terrible, bro.
They've had the transfer kid playing more than him.
Yeah, they have.
Like, that's a joke. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry. That's a kid that had over 2,000 yards rushing the two previous years, had 6.1 yards per carry in 23, averaged 5.6 last year. Kid that was an absolute warrior against Georgia Tech. Georgia, I mean, it wasn't only Haynes King. Went out and rushed for over 100 yards for Vanderbilt in the bowl game. and the just the lack of any kind of push from him down the stretch. He had 10 carries against Pitt. The last time he had more than 10 carries was October 11th against Virginia Tech. Just he was a decoy for Haynes King. So yeah, I think look. I just don't think this Georgia Tech team is that good. I think and you know what? Kudos to them for finally having a chance to have an easier schedule. But after what they had to face last year, where they had to play Florida State, Syracuse on the road, Louisville on the road, Notre Dame on a neutral field, Virginia Tech on the road, Miami, and at Georgia, like they deserved a year with a down schedule because their 2 previous years. I mean, year before that, they had to play Louisville, a ranked Louisville team. They had to play at Ole Miss. They had to play at Miami, at Clemson, home against Georgia. They've had some rough schedules the past couple of years, so they kind of were due for a weak schedule, and they took advantage of it. And props to them for doing that. Brent Key's done a nice job with that team in some ways, but I just don't think they're that good of a team. I think their last year's team is more dangerous than this year's team. They just played a tougher schedule. I mean, if they had last year's schedule, their record is the same as it was last year, if not worse. They had to beat Florida State, Georgia State. Do they beat Syracuse at Syracuse in week 3? I don't think they do. Before Steve got hurt, I don't think they do. VMI at home win at Louisville, that's probably a loss. Home against Duke, home against North Carolina, probably win those 2. So right now they're 5-2, and they were 5-2 last year. Then they play Notre Dame on a neutral field. That's a loss. They play at Virginia Tech. This year, that's probably a win. They play Miami at home this year. I don't think that's a win this year. I think Miami beats them this year. They get NC State at home, and they play Georgia Tech on the road, 7-5. That's exactly what they were last year. Maybe a game better, this year's team. I think it just benefited from playing a weak schedule. So I'm not at all surprised that they got beat by Pitt. I think Pitt's better than they are. I don't think we did a prediction for that game last week.
Mm-mm.
Did we?
No.
But I would be willing to bet that both Trevor and I would have picked Pitt in that game to win that game.
Yep.
So now, is Pitt going to be good enough to beat Miami? It's a different bat. That's a different challenge because Miami's very good in the trenches. We'll see how they do.
From J. Melvin, 2212, Brian, do you think Lincoln Riley leaves?
I don't think he will because I don't know that he's going to be coveted. I think the bloom is off the rose? Is that the expression, right? Like the shine is off of Lincoln Riley. I think people now recognize that he's a great offensive mind, but not a great head coach.
If he leaves, it would be to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And hopefully GMs kind of learn. Tech. Yeah, like hopefully GMs in the NFL learn their lesson from trying to make Cliff Kingsbury a head coach. And then when they just made him an offensive coordinator, he started cooking again. So it's the only, I'm put it this way, Jay Melvin, I'm not going to put money on it, but it wouldn't shock me if he did.
Yeah, agree.
From ND Engineer 23, leading up to the regular season finale, who is your MVP for each unit? Special teams, offense, and defense. Bonus points for not picking Jay Love because it's too easy of a pick.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we will have this show after the season. But based on where I am right now, if I can't take Jeremiah Love for MVP, the guy that I would go for MVP on the offense is probably Malachi Fields. I think having valuable, not most outstanding, valuable, having a weapon like him in the offense has made life so much easier for everybody else, including the running backs. I mean, he's such a weapon, and CJ Carr at quarterback is such a weapon that USC decided we're not going to try to stop the run. We're going to focus on stopping the pass. In late October. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's been incredibly valuable. Defensively, MVP. Most valuable? Oh, boy. I'll probably go Drake Bowen, most valuable. I say most valuable. And then special teams, Jadarian Price. I mean, he's a game changer. And that says how good he is. To Trevor's point earlier, the fact that it's not James Rendell, speaks volumes about how good Jadarian Price has been this year, because James Rendell's arguably the best punter in college football right now. That would be mine. But if I'm allowed to pick Jeremiah Love, he's my MVP. But if you want me to not pick him, then that's who it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't – I guess I'm just not going to get the bonus points. I mean, it's Jeremiah Love on offense. I guess
well, I'm trying to give him an answer like that gets to what he's kind of looking for, there.
Sure.
But yeah.
If not, then I'll go Malachi Fields. Defense, it's easy for me. It's Leonard Moore. Like, for the value, like, not even most outstanding. I mean, there's just not another boundary. There's not another corner on that roster that could play boundary the way that he could, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, so he's my MVP on defense, and then special teams, it's Jadarian.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Super chat from Florida Irish. Thank you for the super chat. Miami fans simply can't understand that our 10-2 records aren't created equal. They also say we're afraid to join a conference. Fun fact, we have played more ACC championships than Miami.
That's actually not accurate. They've played the same number of ACC championships. Miami did play Clemson for the ACC championship in, let me see here real quick. It was within the last 5 or 6 years. Give me a second. I think it was like late 2010s or early 2020s. Let me go find it. Miami lost to, it was 2017. Miami played Clemson in the ACC championship. So
lost 38-3.
That's right. So it's not accurate. They've played for the same number of conference championship games as they're 0-1. So yes, Notre Dame has played in the same number of ACC championships as Miami, and they've played in it more recently. What you have to understand is when somebody says something like, well, Notre Dame's afraid to join a conference, what they're basically admitting is, I'm not real smart, and I don't have a comeback for whatever it is you just said to me. So I'm just going to – it's like the football debating version of, well, yeah, well, you're ugly when you're 7. Or you're fat, or you're dumb when you're a 7-year-old. And you're arguing in, recess of the first grade. That's the same thing. Oh, you're afraid to join the conference. Okay, sure. Like, whatever you say. So I don't really pay attention to those comments anymore. But I do, when Miami fans say it, I do like to point to the fact that A, you used to be independent. You only joined because you aren't your program's not significant enough, doesn't matter enough to actually play. As an independent anymore. You couldn't survive being an independent. And then point out and say, well, you might want to be careful about us joining your league because we did that once and look what happened. And that Clemson that beat us then doesn't exist anymore. I mean, do ACC fans not get that? Like Notre Dame, let's say, first of all, Notre Dame's not playing Miami in week 1. If they're in the ACC, they'd have got them in week 5 or 6. Miami's not beating Notre Dame in week 5 or 6. So there's just a lot of things where these people are clowns. Miami fans really suck at arguing online. They just say dumb things that they're easy to disprove. It's do you think no one else has Google? Is this kind of what you're thinking? I know you guys don't do any research for anything. Do you assume that nobody else does either? I don't think so.
No, Florida Irish, one, appreciate the super chat. Second, I'm just kind of treating Miami fans kind of like the whiny little kid that you just kind of have to ignore. Everything that they're doing is just for clicks. It's for engagement. That's all it is. There's no argument that I could make that no matter how factual, no matter what stats I bring up, none of it, not a one of them is going to go, you know what, Trev? It's actually a really good point. I've completely changed my stance on how I view this. Yep. It's just not going to happen. It's wasted characters. It's wasted time and energy. Why do I say that? Because I have more important things in my life going on than trying to convince somebody who still types with all caps lock on why Notre Dame should be ranked ahead of Miami. It's wasted breath. It's wasted energy. Now, that being said, I've thoroughly enjoyed going through what Brian has been doing on social media. But it's just one of those where Florida, you just ignore them because their arguments carry literally zero weight. Literally none. It's just, it's what it is. I mean, for a fan base that
I do it because I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy smacking them down. It's fun. And some of it's just so easy. It's like, this is just stupid.
Totally. I mean, look, man, I mean, we're talking about a fan base that's, Notre Dame fans are so ignorant thinking everybody's their Super Bowl. I guarantee you there in 50 years, there's going to be a 90-year-old Miami fan still talking about that infamous 3-point win in 2025. Like,
that apparently was a dominant victory for Miami. That's my favorite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Don't let the scoreboard confuse you. That was a far more convincing win. Well, no, it wasn't.
Don't let the scoreboard or the stat line or the box score or the college football playoff rankings or the eye test fool you. That Miami handled them. It's like,
yeah. Okay.
Whatever.
Okay.
Super chat from Fighting Mike 87. Most likely Notre Dame player to surprise us during the award season, a la Xavier Watts winning the Benardic Award in 2023. Then he has a follow-up question. Has safety play been better in 24-25?
Well, I don't know about surprise. Like, I mean, if Leonard Moore won the Bednarik, that would surprise me. Because, I mean, I think if I had a vote, with all due respect to the great season Leonard Moore's having, I'm voting for Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. He is unbelievably good. And Leonard missed a couple games.
Yeah.
That factors in as well.
I'm on the same page as you. It would surprise me if he won the Thorpe just because of how the Thorpe gets voted on.
Because it's garbage. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it would.
Now, that one could surprise us. They might actually vote, for once for who the best guy is. That's factual. Like, I don't think Jeremiah Love winning the Doak would surprise anybody, other than the fact that it's another award that just doesn't always give it to the best player. I think it's pretty obvious he's the best player this year, so I think he's probably going to win it. And it's I think it's the second. I think I heard this on the TV the other night. It's the second or third oldest award. Notre Dame players never won the Doak Walker Award, ever. No Notre Dame players ever won it. And I can't tell you the last time a Notre Dame player was a finalist, because I don't think Audric was even a finalist, was he?
No.
In 2023?
No, he wasn't.
So I don't even know the last time that there was a finalist. I'd imagine maybe like Reggie Brooks or Jerome back in 92, maybe. But, yeah, I don't know that Notre Dame player's even been a finalist in any recent time. I think he'll get that. I don't know that there's any other, I don't know that. I mean, maybe Eli Raridan for the Mackey if he has a big final game or his blocking gets taken into account. I don't think so. But I don't even think he's a semifinalist for it. I haven't paid attention much to the Mackey Award, but I don't think that you'll see any that are surprising us like Xavier Watts in 23. Has safety play been better in 24 or 25? On the whole, start to finish, no. Has there been stretches where safety play was as good as last year? Sure, stretches. Last year's safety room was so much more consistent than this year's group.
100%.
That's the difference.
Yep.
And they started 2 games without Tay Johnson, where the safety, or 3 games without Tay Johnson, where the safety play was just not good.
Yeah. Yep. Same page. Super chat from Douglas Seduth. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you, Brian and Trevor, for all the great content this season. I believe we can play with anyone and beat anyone rightly now. I hope we have the opportunity to play and beat the reigning champion, Ohio State.
I agree. And I appreciate the second super chat, Douglas, cleaning that up a little bit. I know sometimes my computer doesn't cooperate with me either. But I know that I'm not – I know everybody doesn't agree with me, but I do want to play Ohio State in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
I do. I look, if Notre Dame wins it all and doesn't beat Ohio State, I don't care. I think I'll still feel great, but I'm not going to lie. It'll add a little something to it if you have to slay the dragon. I mean, they are the big dog for you. Georgia probably doesn't look at Ohio State the same way because they beat Ohio State the last time they played. Like, there's other teams. Michigan doesn't look at Ohio State that way. But if you're Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman, there's one team that has owned you. And that's Ohio State. So, yeah, it'd be pretty good to knock them off on the way there. So, you want to be the man? Woo! You got to beat the man. So, yeah, I want to beat the man. And Ohio State right now is the man.
Yeah.
It's a little Ric Flair action for you from back in the old
That was good.
days. Yeah,
That was good.
Very much. Thank you.
Another super chat from James Salumi. Appreciate you, James. Just popped into my mind. Any idea where Kenny goes?
Honestly, Kent James, I'm not trying to disrespect your question. I don't care right now. Right now, I'm focused on this season. I will gladly dive into that in the offseason because I do care where Kenny is going to end up. I want Kenny to be successful. What I mean is just like probably not caring is the wrong phrase to use. It's just I haven't even thought about it right now. I'm not thinking about who's going to leave, who's not going to leave. I'll think about that stuff during the period between the last game and the playoff. I'm not thinking about that right now.
Yeah,
I'm really not. And with the way that the portal is now, it doesn't open until January. They don't have to worry about guys bailing like Bo Perbula did last year. It's a different timeline. So I'm to say I don't care about it was probably the incorrect phrase, and so I take that back. That's my bet on that. I just haven't thought about it, and I haven't put a list together. I don't even know who's going to need a quarterback necessarily. I will care more about that. I will put more thought into that when we get into the offseason because I do want Kenny to go somewhere where he can be successful. And just like I wanted Steve to be successful, just like I wanted Drew Pine to be successful. You want all those guys to be successful. They're good kids. I was hoping that Tyler Buckner was be successful. That's why I wished he would have gone to Stanford instead of Alabama. But I just haven't put a lot of thought into that right now.
From Dis 6900, do you think Freeman is hearing all the noise on TV and online about the Miami versus Notre Dame debate?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Like, he can say all he wants. Oh, I don't worry about that. I love how Marcus Freeman will say, well, we don't really talk about that, hear that. And then all of a sudden he'll make a comment that's clearly in response to some of those things being said nationally. If he's not hearing it directly, I don't think Katie Lonergan would be doing her job if she didn't at least kind of make him aware of those things because it's good to use for motivation for your football team. It's smart to hear those things. You don't dwell on it. You don't sit down and listen to our podcast and be like, what's Driscoll going to say in response to the, is he going to have I don't think he cares about any of that, but like he's aware of that because it's part of his job. And then also you've got to know, hey, Miami's nipping on your heels. This is what the committee said about where they are for you. So you better go out and have some impressive wins over common opponents. Like, I think he's aware of that stuff to the point that he needs to be able to effectively do his job. Do I think him and Katie are sitting down there on Monday morning and they're just spending an hour and a half going all over the things that people in the national media said? So here's what Kirk Herbstreit had to say. And here's what, no, I don't think they're doing that. But she's probably giving us some cliffs, right, of what's being said. And then they're really zeroing in on like things that the committee members say, things like that, because he has to know that stuff as the head football coach. So I would imagine he's aware of it. Players are definitely aware of it. There's no doubt about that.
From USMA 87, I'm assuming Jay Love is going to New York for the ceremony. Has his odds of winning the Heisman gone up, in your opinion? I mean,
not even.
It's not even an opinion. Like, like they've legitimately just gone up. I mean, Vince talked about it in the post game. Going into the Virginia game, he was at plus 3,000 odds. At the end of the Virginia game, he was at like plus 400. So yeah. I mean, he going into the Virginia game, I think that he was like, he had like the 7th best odds to win the Heisman, but like the highest of any non-quarterback. He is now ahead of Marcel Reed. He's ahead of Diego Pavia. He's ahead of Ty Simpson, like all those guys that were in front of him before. Jeremiah Love now has the 3rd best odds, at least on FanDuel, to win. So, yeah. The worst 2K big men. When does the playoff start? Is it like December 20th? I think it's 19th and
close. Yeah, it's the day before. So it's like last year. There's one game on Friday night at 8:00, and then on Saturday, December 20th, there will be 3 games. So it's that weekend, starting with the 19th and 20th. So there's 8:00 game on the 19th, and then there's a 12:00, 3:30, and a 7:30 game on Saturday the 20th. The quarterfinals, there will be one game will be Wednesday the 31st. And then there's 3 games on January 1st. The Cotton Bowl's on the 31st, and then the Orange, Rose, and Sugar are the other quarterfinal games. They will be on the 1st. The semifinals will be on January 8th and 9th, and then the championship game will be on the 19th. So very similar schedule to last year.
Yep. From Josh Bufo, when J. Love breaks the rushing record, does he make your Notre Dame Mount Rushmore? He does for mine.
But running back, sure. I mean, for running back, he's kind of already there, but he would definitely be there if he breaks the rushing record. If it comes to like all-time Notre Dame players, no, he doesn't, because Vegas Ferguson is not on my list of the Notre Dame Mount Rushmore for a team. Autry Denson, who's the career yards leader for a career, is not on my Mount Rushmore for that. Mount Rushmore at Notre Dame is more about guys that win it all, win Heisman's or win national championships. That's what it is. Now, if he breaks the rushing record and wins the Heisman and Notre Dame makes a deep run, you could have that conversation. But if we're talking about the University of Notre Dame and we're talking Mount Rushmore, I think you kind of got to have a ring. You know who's one of my favorite players of all time who's not on my Mount Rushmore? Brady Quinn. I mean, he didn't win a championship. That's what it is at Notre Dame. I mean, right now, my Mount Rushmore is probably like, Tony Rice, Johnny Lujak. You know what I mean? Like, you got to go back to guys that, Angelo Bertelli. I mean, you got to give me guys that won championships.
Yeah.
Maybe Leon Hart. I think Leon Hart played on some championship teams. Like, you got to give me some guys that won titles. That's what I need. Not awards.
Yeah. Another one from Josh. With the current landscape of college football, NIL in the playoffs, what, in your opinion, are the top 5 coaching positions, no matter if they are open or not?
I think the top 5 jobs in college football, in no order, are Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Texas, and 5 is a little bit trickier for me. It's one of Bama, LSU, Michigan, USC, maybe. That would probably be the guys. Maybe Oklahoma. Probably be the ones kind of battling for that number 5 job for me. Unless I'm just like drawing a blank on somebody. Clemson's in the conversation for me for that, maybe that 5 spot. I wouldn't put them quite as high as some of those others in the SEC. I'd probably lean towards LSU over Bama. I think Bama can become a better job. Bama just doesn't have as much money as people think that they do. I also think that the Bama job is still a little bit Nick Saban made it a special job, but he also kind of ruined it for the next couple guys to come after him.
Sure.
Which kind of taints it a little bit as far as would I really want that job? Like, I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'd put it. I do think the Notre Dame job has become an even better job in this world of NIL. Because now Notre Dame can pay. Now Notre Dame can use their financial resources to acquire talent in a way they never could.
Sure.
It was a game changer for Notre Dame. Game changer. And we told you it would be.
Mm-hmm. Super chat from ND Milton fan. Thank you for the super chat. J Love has the most great runs of the year, but Jay Price dragging a guy 10 yards is the best.
I mean, number one, that wasn't a run. That was a kick return. That was a heck of a play, but dragging a kicker does not exactly chalk up to a guy in the same game who put a 6 spin move on an actual guy who knows how to tackle. Well, that wasn't even the best run of that game.
I mean, J Love rolled off of the chest of a guy, stayed on his feet, and then got up and ran.
That's not even Jadarian Price's best run of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. His cutback, I broke this down on the video today, the run game breakdown, because I do have about a 20-minute long run game breakdown from Saturday that's already on the premium message board. I have all the stats broken down. It's already published on the message board. But the cut he made on his 58-yard touchdown run, the vision on that play was sick. Sick. Talking about Jadarian, not Jeremiah,
Yep.
Jadarian. Jeremiah also
Yep.
had some sick cuts, but Jadarian's like, dude, that was nuts. So, yeah, that wasn't even his best run of the season. That was entertaining, that's for sure, but not best. I'll just go here, Tom Chris. I know there are some theoretical possibilities for Notre Dame to miss the playoffs. What scenario do you see that could keep us out? I know it's mental gymnastics, but just wondering. It is mental gymnastics, but essentially it boils down to Bama, BYU both win their conference championships, and Miami passes Notre Dame. And BYU wins their conference championship in a very close game over Texas Tech. That would essentially be the worst case scenario for Notre Dame at this point.
From Adam Garcia, what are the chances do you think Notre Dame will host, and who would their most likely opponent be?
I think the chances of hosting have gone down quite a bit with some lack of upsets the last couple of weeks, but they're still only one upset away. I mean, I think right now you need Texas Tech, Oregon, Texas Tech to lose at West Virginia. Because I think if Texas Tech loses in their conference title game to BYU in a rematch, I don't think that should drop them below, should not necessarily drop them below Notre Dame. It would depend on how they lose. If they get smacked, then that maybe changes things a little bit.
Sure.
But if they lose to West Virginia, that 100% changes the dynamic for their ranking. If Oklahoma loses to LSU at home, which I just don't see happening, they barely just beat West. That team is quit. They barely just beat Western Kentucky. That team is completely checked out. They couldn't even move the ball on Bama, and Bama's got a really good defense, but they don't have Oklahoma's defense. That's going to be an ugly game, I think, for LSU. And then the one that I think is most likely is Ole Miss getting beat by Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. So on the road, those players hear all that noise. They know that their coach is leaving. They know. And I could see that team not being locked in. And I thought that was a trap game potentially anyway. So we'll see how that one goes. And then, of course, if Oregon loses at Washington, which is also probably the second most likely upset to happen. They just need one of those four things to happen. And I think they host. I don't know, Trev, if I'd pick any of those teams to lose if I was doing a prediction today. Maybe Ole Miss losing to Mississippi State might be my upset of the week pick, but I don't know that I have any of those teams necessarily an upset alert. As far as picking them to lose, all of them could happen. I just don't see it.
Yeah, Adam, the chances are there, but they're slim. I mean, I'm where I was at the start of these playoff rankings. I wasn't, even back in the first week in November, I wasn't super confident that Notre Dame was going to host anyways. Still a chance, but I said they were likely going to be around 8 or 9. When everything was said and done, and it's kind of trending in that direction. Ideally, they get up to 8th because I would love for Notre Dame to host. And if that's the case, who would their most likely opponent be? My guess would probably be Alabama at 9th, assuming they don't play in the conference championship and one of the teams above them loses and they just move up one spot. So it'd probably be
because there's a chance that a team gets upset, falls behind Notre Dame, and then Bama beats A&M in the championship game, ASCC championship, and jumps out of Notre Dame. That's still possible as well. Yeah, you're right.
Jason Rose, do you think Lane Kiffin is LSU bound? Find it hard to believe that he would turn down what is reportedly being offered. I think he's done at Ole Miss, but wanted your thoughts.
I think he's done. Look, with Lane Kiffin, if somebody called me tonight and said, hey, man, I'm hearing that it's LSU, I've heard it's a done deal. If somebody said it to me, I'd say, okay, cool. I'm still not going to believe it till he actually does it because I could just knowing Lane Kiffin, he's just a troll. I mean, really what he is. There's some things I like about Lane Kiffin and things like this that I really despise about Lane Kiffin. You're really going to put your football team through this? Come on. That's just, he's just Lane. It's all about Lane. But I just don't see how he stays at Ole Miss. And honestly, I don't know that Ole Miss is going to fight hard to keep him. I think they love what he's done for the program, but I also think the Lane show can get real tiresome after a while. and I think he's probably burned some bridges with the way he's handled this whole thing. I'd pretty much tell him to fine, go to LSU, and we'll try to find somebody that can get the job done here. So I don't know who that'll be, but I do think he's done. I do think he's done.
Jay Melvin, BD, do you think with this year of mentoring by Malachi that either Cam Williams or Micah Gilbert can take his place next year?
I think Micah Gilbert can be a good football player for Notre Dame. I don't think Micah Gilbert can become Malachi Fields. I think Cam Williams has the physical talent to become that guy, but he needs he's got a long way to go. I think that Cam has a shot to be that guy. I think most likely if they have another Malachi type player in the boundary next year, it's either Cam Williams has a breakout offseason or they go to the portal and get a guy.
Yeah, we see that.
That would be that's kind of my 2 cents on that one. So Trevor, my friend, that is gonna do it for the mailbag. That's really going over an hour. So that was fun. Great, lots of great questions. So Trev, why don't you take us out of here, my dude?
Well, folks, that will do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Here in a little bit over an hour, the guys are going live on IB Nation Sports Beat to recap Marcus Freeman's press conference. Currently, right now, it's actually on my TV. Notre Dame's men's basketball is playing Kansas in the Players Eras tournament. They currently have an 11-7 lead right now. So tune in and watch the men's team play in the first round of the Players Era Festival. It's going on right now. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
Also, a reminder, shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday this week. No show on Thursday. We'll also be going live Tuesday night for our playoff preview. And we are going to have a live game chat, live game show, game watch on Saturday. So be ready for that.